Chapter 3483, Swords stabbed into each other. A certain someone who had been watching indifferently at the door had a cold glint in his eyes. This person deserved to die. A certain someone did not make a move, because he knew that the little rascal would not bring people to rob for no reason. He definitely had a motive. Moreover, with Xian Yuanzuo's skills, it was impossible for him to hurt the little rascal. Just as a certain honored warrior was thinking, he heard two screams. Then everyone in the room stared blankly at one spot. They saw that Xian Yuanzhua and his lackey had a sword stuck in their chests, and the hilts of the two swords were still held in each other's hands. The two of them still maintained their standing posture. Their eyes were filled with fear and anger as they fell to the ground in front of everyone's eyes. Oh my God! Someone died. I was scared to death. He Xinjiu, who was stunned at the side, fell to the ground with a faint. The rest of the children finally regained their senses and cried out in fear. If it was just a fight, no one would care about it. However, this person had died, and one of the dead was a prince of the Juntian kingdom. This matter was going to blow up. When the guards heard the commotion, they rushed over. When they saw the two children stabbing each other with their swords, they were stunned. Did they die together? The leader of the guards began to interrogate them about what happened. Everyone told him everything. As for how Xian Yuanzhua and his lackey stabbed each other with their swords, they did not know. Because it was already chaotic and the dormitory was small, no one noticed what happened. However, a child in Xian Yuanzuo's dormitory said, at that time, Lu Hong was fighting with Xiao Bao. Maybe she knew what was going on. The leader immediately looked at He Xinjiu, who had just woken up. He Xinjiu said in shock, I was fighting with him at that time. Then he stabbed at me. I dodged to the side and then I saw the two of them in such a state. The leader frowned. Could it be that Xian Yuanzhua was trying to sneak an attack on Xiao Bao from behind? He didn't expect Xiao Bao to dodge to the side and he couldn't retract his attack in time, so he stabbed Lu Hong. Lu Hong couldn't retract his attack in time and stabbed him? He was not the only one who thought so. Almost everyone present thought so. Xian Yuanzhua had wanted to sneak an attack on Xiao Bao, but in the end he and Lu Hong's lives were at stake. It was really a case of robbing the goose that laid the golden eggs. The little leader took out a voice transmission talisman and reported the news to Instructor Deng. Very soon Instructor Deng rushed over. He inquired about the incident and then checked the two's wounds. He didn't find anything unusual, so he had people take the two bodies away and then let everyone return to their dormitories. The little fatty lay on the bed and suddenly sat up. His forehead was full of cold sweat. He suddenly remembered what the little pervert had said earlier. If he wanted to get rid of him once and for all, he had to kill Xian Yuanzhua. The reason why the two of them stabbed each other was not, could it be that the little pervert had set them up on purpose? When he thought about how He Xinjiu had led them to rob for no reason and had taken out a whip to provoke them, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that everything had been planned by her. How could a 5-year-old girl have such meticulous thoughts? The little fatty was frightened but also a little impressed. He decided to follow that little pervert in the future. Anyway, he would not suffer any losses if he followed her. Moreover, De Bao had not made a move all this while. He always felt that De Bao was more powerful than Xiao Bao, so it was definitely not bad for him to be the little pervert's sidekick. Chapter 3484, A certain person who was angry. The next day, Instructor Deng announced the decision of punishment. Although fighting was not prohibited, someone had died last night. Even if they had not killed the person directly, they could not escape responsibility. As the leader, He Xinjiu was deducted 20 points, Fatty and the others were deducted 10 points, and Xian Yuanzuo's roommates were each deducted 5 points. Then this matter came to an end. Yun Chuzhou once again realized that even a first-grade country did not have much status in the eyes of the Lihen Palace. Otherwise, if a prince of a first-grade country died, it would not have been settled so hastily. Perhaps it was because 2 people had died, but the following lessons were much more normal. It was nothing more than teaching the Lihen Palace's palace rules and some miscellaneous things. After Xian Yuanzuo's death, his followers had already become more active. They all wanted to replace him as the new leader and then compete with Deng Qinyuan. For a time there were endless fights, but none of them provoked He Xinjiu and the other 4 groups. Yun Chuzhou couldn't be bothered with these things. If Xian Yuanzhua hadn't provoked her, she wouldn't have set him up to die. This fellow only had one goal now, and that was to stir up more trouble and deduct all the remaining points. However, the trees wanted to be quiet, but the wind would not stop. On this day, He Xinjiu was secretly teasing a certain lord. The little fatty and the others ran back to the dormitory with bruises on their faces. Immediately after, the dormitory door was kicked open and a boy who was obviously taller than the other children walked in with his men. Little treasure, now that the ninth prince is dead, I, Liao Yuan, am the new leader. Do you four groups want to submit to us or do you want to submit to Deng Qianyuan? Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. This guy was about to kiss a certain someone just now. Now that he was disturbed by these people, the unknown fire in her heart immediately burned up. She said coldly, "Get out?" Liao Yuan and his followers were stunned at first, and then they became angry out of embarrassment. This little thing really took themselves too seriously. He really deserved a beating. Liao Yuan took a few steps and raised his leg to kick He Xinjiu. Before He Xinjiu could move, Liao Yuan flew out like a kite with a broken string, knocking down a few of his followers. Yun Chujio looked at the expressionless man in surprise. She was puzzled. The gigolo usually did not participate in these things. Why did he change his attitude today? The man looked coldly at Liao Yuan, who was staggering up. For some reason he did not like this Liao Yuan. He would not admit that it was because Liao Yuan interrupted Yun Chujio's treatment. Liao Yuan was so unlucky that he did not even know who had kicked him. He thought that it was Yun Chujio who had done it, so he was a little afraid. This stupid girl was really fast, but it was also because he was not prepared. He had to get back at her or else he would lose his position as the leader. Thinking of this, Liao Yuan pounced on He Xinjiu again, and was sent flying by a certain someone. If it was not because he did not want to cause trouble, he would have slapped him to death. This time, not only did Liao Yuan see it clearly, but the other children also saw it clearly. This Debao was usually quiet, but they did not expect him to be so powerful. Everyone immediately had the intention to retreat. They did not want to be abused, so they all stepped back and wanted to leave. He Xinjiu sneered and whipped the ground a few times. "You want to leave? Those who beat me up will be beaten up for nothing? Either let me whip you a few times or obediently submit to me." Chapter 3485 was impatient to play. Liao Yuan shouted fiercely, "Little treasure, don't go too far. Although your brother's skills are not bad, you are not a match for so many of us. Get lost. Did I ask you? I don't care if you want to submit to me. Other than this idiot, do you want to submit or not? Think about it, is there anyone more suitable than me? As long as you follow me, I promise to lead you to kill Deng Qianyuan," He Xinjiu said with a smile. Most of the children thought that the kill Yun Chujio said was to annex Deng Qianyuan's forces. Only little Fatty shivered. This little pervert was not going to kill Deng Qianyuan, right? The little fatty did not quite understand. What exactly did Deng Qianyuan do to provoke this little pervert? Although they had only been together for a few days, the little fatty finally understood that this little pervert was very lazy. If he did not take the initiative to provoke her, she would not take the initiative to deal with him. He did not know that He Xinjiu had accidentally seen Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuan whispering together last night. She had not paid much attention to it. But looking at the situation today, he knew that everything that Liao Yuan had done was instigated by Deng Qianyuan. Since Deng Qianyuan was seeking his own death, she would fulfill his wish. Most of those children were originally fence-sitters. It didn't matter who was the leader. In any case, whoever was stronger would submit to whoever was stronger. Now that Liao Yuan was no match for Debao, he immediately submitted to He Xinjiu. Liao Yuan nearly fainted from anger. He had originally brought people to deal with that little thing, but now all his subordinates had become that little thing's lackeys. It was simply infuriating. When a few of Liao Yuan's competitors saw that Liao Yuan had lost power, they immediately began to mock and ridicule him, directly pushing him out. Liao Yuan gnashed his teeth in hatred and immediately went to Deng Qianyuan to discuss countermeasures. Deng Qianyuan had originally thought that victory was within his grasp. As long as Liao Yuan subdued the people of the fourth group, he would indirectly control everyone. This way the chances of him remaining in the Li Hate Palace would be very high. Who would have thought that not only did Liao Yuan fail to subdue the fourth group, but his subordinates also defected to that little treasure. He was truly a good-for-nothing. Deng Qianyuan's thoughts were much deeper than Shen Yuanzhua's. Otherwise he would not have been able to recruit so many people. He comforted Liao Yuan, telling him not to act rashly. Unexpectedly, just as the two of them were talking, the dormitory door was kicked open and He Xinjiu walked in with a bunch of brats. Liao Yuan's competitors immediately cursed Liao Yuan for being a traitor and shameless. If it weren't for Yun Chujio not saying anything, they would definitely go over and give Liao Yuan a good beating. Liao Yuan's face was pale. He never thought that these people would come over to eavesdrop. Yun Chujio laughed coldly in her heart. No matter how deep these devilish children's thoughts were, they were just a bunch of idiots in front of her. Deng Qianyuan, on the other hand, was much calmer than Liao Yuan. He looked at Yun Chujio and said, "Little treasure, what do you want? Don't tell me you want to fight with us? We have 2 more people than you. If we fight, you won't be able to gain any advantage. Yun Chujio didn't have the patience to play any more tricks with these brats. She jumped forward and directly beat Deng Qianyuan up. Then this guy stepped on Deng Qianyuan and directly asked his followers, "Do you want to submit to this king, or do you want to be beaten up by this king?" Chapter 3486 was finally eliminated. Those brats were shocked by He Xinjia's valiant behavior. When they looked at Deng Qianyuan's swollen pig-like face, they immediately surrendered without any moral integrity. He Xinjio nodded with satisfaction. Then she brought her people to the other dormitories. Without much effort, she took all the children under her command. Yun Chujio was not afraid of Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuanqi. After all, there were so many people watching them. This fellow returned to the dormitory and lay on the bed, pondering. It was not a good idea to continue like this. The East Phoenix country was without a leader. If she delayed for too long, her position as the female emperor might be taken away by others. However, how could she be eliminated quickly? It would be difficult to do so since she would lose points without causing trouble. A certain honored guest lying beside her had been waiting for her to continue treating his illness. Who would have thought that after waiting for so long, he would discover that He Xinjio was asleep? A certain honored guest felt a little frustrated. The reason he gave himself was that the reason why he was so eager for the little rascal to treat his illness was so that he could recover his spiritual power as soon as possible. Yes, that was the reason. It was possible that He Xinjio and Di Biming had finally achieved their goals in the following period of assessment. They were frequently deducted points and then both of them were eliminated. He Xinjio was filled with joy. She thought that she would be able to leave the selection academy just like that. She did not expect to be told that, considering their safety, they would have to wait until the final 10 people were selected before they would be sent back to the Juntiantian kingdom. He Xinjio held her breath. If she had known this would happen, she would have continued to play with the devilish brat. She waited and waited. After another 10 days, 10 people were finally selected. She did not expect that Deng Qianyuan and Liao Yuan would be among them. Little Fatty and the others were all eliminated. Yun Chujio felt that as the king she should comfort Little Fatty and the others. However, before she could say anything, Little Fatty and the others happily said, "King, this is great. We have all been eliminated. This way you can lead us to play together in the future." He Xinjio, did she lead these brats astray? In their eyes, playing with her was more important than entering the Li Hate Palace? However, when this fellow thought about it, these brats were not that old to begin with. They did not have the utilitarianism of an adult, so they were not that sad after being eliminated. Yun Chujio and these eliminated children were brought out of the selection academy and then boarded a flying spirit tool. Yun Chujio looked at the old man on the flying spirit tool and was slightly surprised. It was actually instructor Lu Jiaoshi who had asked them to kill. They were only escorting them back to the Juntiantian kingdom. Was there a need to send an instructor? Shouldn't he stay behind to continue the assessment of the students who had been selected? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi did not say much. He just told everyone not to play around and then left the cabin. Although Yun Chujio was a little surprised, she did not take it to heart. She brought her followers and sat in the cabin obediently. 2 days later at night while she was half asleep, Yun Chujio noticed that there seemed to be a smell in the cabin. Her heart was shocked. It was actually the soul-devouring powder. She could not help but frown. Could it be that instructor Lu Jiaoshi? What was he trying to do? Di Biming had long woken up. He took out an antidote and swallowed it. Then he exchanged a glance with Yun Chujio. The two of them lay back down as if nothing had happened. The next morning when the children woke up, they were shocked to find that their spiritual power was gone. Even though some of them found that it was caused by the spirit-devouring powder, they could not open their storage rings to take the antidote because they did not have any spiritual power. Chapter 3487 Unsealing of a Good Item. The children were terrified. At this moment, the flying spirit tool landed on the ground. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi had a few guards chase the children off the flying spirit tool and then entered a valley. The children were not fools. They naturally felt that something was not right. Some of the children began to cry and wanted to leave by force. They did not expect to be killed by Instructor Lu. With that, the rest of the children immediately lost the courage to resist. They could only follow obediently forward. The children were brought to a cave and then locked in a huge cage. Instructor Lu waved his hand and ordered the guards to guard outside the cave. Then he laughed coldly. "Little things, are you curious about why this old man captured you?" The children looked at Instructor Lu in terror. Even in their dreams they had never imagined that things would turn out like this. Hadn't they agreed to send them back to the Kingdom of June? Why had they been brought here? This old man wants to unseal a good item. It must be soaked in the blood of a virgin boy and a virgin girl. Moreover, it must be fresh blood. You are the most suitable candidates, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said with a strange laugh. Some of the children trembled as they said, You can't do this. If we don't go back, our parents will find the Li Hate Palace and demand an explanation. Instructor Lu sneered, Find the Li Hate Palace and demand an explanation? Not to mention you guys, even if that 9th prince died, wouldn't he die in vain? When the time comes, this old man can just find an excuse to fool them. Who do you think will pursue this matter? Hearing what Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said, the children could not help but wail in sorrow. They were really at a dead end now. They had truly experienced what despair was. He Xinjia's focus was on the good thing that Instructor Lu Jiaoshi had said. What kind of ghost thing could only be unsealed with the blood of a boy and a girl? In the middle of the cave there was a well-dug stone pit. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi carefully took out a jade box from his storage ring, and then took out a thumb-sized bone from it. He Xinjia was shocked when she saw the bone. This bone was very similar to the one that Di Biming found in the fallen god abyss. She couldn't help but look at Di Biming beside her. He was still expressionless, but there were some waves in his eyes. This confirmed Yun Chujia's guess. Yun Chujia recalled what Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said before. Could it be that the seal could only be broken with the blood of a boy and a girl? Was the piece in the gigolo's hand unsealed? Was it also unsealed in such a cruel way? Yun Chujio could not help but spit at herself when she thought of this. No matter how cold-blooded and heartless the gigolo was, he could not do such a heartless thing. It must be that Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's nonsense. Instructor Lu placed the small bone into the stone pit with trembling hands. Then he looked at the imprisoned child with a fanatical gaze for a while. This was the first time he was soaking in fresh blood, so he had to be careful. He had to choose 2 boys and girls with better aptitude. As he looked at them, his gaze fell on He Xinjiu and Di Biming. This pair of little things were brother and sister, so it was best to soak the holy bone for the first time. He Xinjiu saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's gaze looking at her, and she couldn't help but sneer in her heart. He was really courting death. She stuffed a few bottles of the antidote for the soul-devouring powder into the sleeves of the little fatty behind her. Although the little fatty was very surprised, he had been serving their king these past few days, so he had become more cautious. She immediately hid a few porcelain bottles in her sleeves. Chapter 3488 What kind of bone is this? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi walked to the side of the cage with a sinister smile. He took out the key to open the cage and directly took Yun Chujio and Di Biming out. The rest of the children looked at Instructor Lu Jiaoshi in horror, but they did not dare to go forward. They did not have any spiritual power now, so even if they tried to resist, it would be futile. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi locked the cage again and then looked at the 2 little ones. It's your honor to be chosen by me first. Come here, be obedient, and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll let you bleed out bit by bit. Yun Chujia's small face twitched and she said with a trembling voice, But we don't want to die. Can't you soak it in chicken or duck blood? Lu Jiaoshi, cut the crap. It must be human blood, and it's the blood of a boy and a girl, said Lu Jiaoshi viciously. Lu Jiaoshi, even if we die, we have to die to understand, right? What kind of bone is this? Why does it have to be the blood of a boy and a girl? Could it be that you made a mistake? Yun Chujia's face was full of curiosity. Lu Jiaoshi reckoned that he didn't have the chance to show off normally, but when he heard Yun Chujia's question, he said proudly, What do you know? This is a holy bone. As long as I soak it in your blood for 49 days, I will be able to refine it, and then my spiritual power will soar. Holy bone? What is a holy bone? Is this thing a human bone or a pig or a dog bone? Yun Chujio looked at the small bone and asked. What Yun Chujio didn't notice was that when she said this, the corner of the eye of a certain person beside her twitched violently, and his face turned a little ugly. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said impatiently, How would I know what kind of bone this is? Anyway, it's a holy bone. Let's cut the crap and start. Instructor Lu said and reached out to grab Yun Chujio. He felt that this little girl was more narrow-minded, so it was safer to kill her first. Unexpectedly, just as his hand was about to touch He Xinjiu ran away. She even shouted, I'm only 5 years old and I still have a lot of years to live. I don't want to die. If you want to soak that broken bone, just let your blood flow. Seeing that Yun Chujio still dared to escape, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said viciously, Stupid girl, you really don't know what's good for you. See how I'll deal with you when I catch you. Really? Then come and catch me? If you can catch me, I'll be at your disposal. He Xinjiu put her hands on her waist and said provocatively. Instructor Liu's face revealed a contemptuous sneer. This little girl was really naive. Not to mention that she was already poisoned by the devouring spirit powder. Even if she was not poisoned, such a small thing was not his match. Instructor Liu thought as he chased after Hei Xinjiu. Hei Xinjiu blinked her eyes. When she saw that Di Biming had already put away the bone, she ran even more happily. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi originally thought that he would be able to catch Hei Xinjiu in a few moves. Who would have thought that the little thing was so slippery that he could not even catch her even after running around the cave several times? Instructor Lu Jiaoshi could not help but become angry from embarrassment. He threatened, "Stupid girl, if you continue to run, don't blame me for not being polite. I can kill you with a slap and soak the holy bone in blood." Yun Chujio curled her lips. "Tsk, who doesn't know how to threaten people? I'm warning you, if you don't stop, this king will kill you." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was stunned at first and then laughed out loud. Clearly, he felt that Yun Chujio was overestimating herself. He said disdainfully, "With just you? Not to mention that you are already poisoned. Even if you are not poisoned, 100 of you are still not my match." Chapter 3489 is for this king. Yun Chujio looked at the arrogant instructor Lu Jiaoshi and revealed a brilliant smile. "Old bastard, you are quite good at bragging. Since you are so good, come and kill me." Instructor Lu Jiaoshi completely lost his patience and said fiercely, "Stupid girl, die." As Instructor Lu said that, he raised his hand and threw a palm at Hei Xinjiu. This palm was full of spiritual power, and the surrounding airflow was distorted. Instructor Lu was filled with the thought that the speed of this palm strike was extremely fast, and that damn girl would definitely not be able to dodge it this time. Who would have thought that the little girl would actually leap to the side with her short legs, forcefully dodging his palm strike? Instructor Lu was flustered and exasperated as he threw another palm strike at Hei Xinjiu, and was then dodged again. Just as he was about to throw another palm strike, a strong wind came from behind him. He hurriedly dodged and then realized that the Bao was actually attacking him. Was he not poisoned? Di Biming did not give him time to think. He raised his hand and an ice dragon lunged at Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. Instructor Lu blurted out in disbelief, "Materialization of spiritual power? Aren't you from Towering Sky Continent?" Di Biming naturally did not answer him. Instead, he stepped up his attack. He knew that he was no match for Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. What he needed to do was to attract Instructor Liu's attention and let Hei Xinjiu save him. At this moment, Hei Xinjiu held a large kitchen knife and cut off the lock of the cage with a click. Then she opened the door of the cage. The reason why Hei Xinjiu said so much nonsense just now was to stall for time and let the children in the cage take the antidote. "Little ones, give it to this king. Didn't that old guy say that even 100 of me are no match for him? Let's teach him a lesson now. Only by killing him will we be able to keep our lives. Therefore, if you have any good treasures, use them on me. Do you hear me?" Hei Xinjiu said sternly. Those children immediately rushed towards Instructor Lu Jiaoshi, who was fighting Di Biming. They hated him to death. If not for their king being quick-witted, they would all die here. They had to kill him. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was shocked and angry. Weren't these children already poisoned? Why are they all fine now? What the hell is going on? The 5 guards outside the cave heard the noise and quickly ran into the cave. When they were halfway through the cave, they saw a big sack flying towards them. The 5 of them quickly dodged. The big sack fell to the ground and the red powder inside flew in all directions. The 5 of them were choked to the point of tears and tears. Before the 5 of them could regain their senses, several bolts of lightning struck toward them. The 5 of them used their spiritual energy shields to defend themselves while rinsing their eyes with water. Finally, they saw a little girl standing in front of them. She was smiling as she hugged a black bird that was as fat as a ball and looked at them. The 5 of them saw a layer of red powder on the ground. Fuck, it was actually chili noodles. The 5 of them were furious. This little girl was too mean. The 5 of them did not have time to think. They removed their spiritual energy barriers and pounced on the little girl, trying to kill her. At this moment, the black bird that the little girl was holding shot a ball of flame at them. The 5 of them did not think much of it. Such flames were not a threat to them, so they did not dodge. The tunnel was narrow to begin with. The flame shot out by the little black bird immediately covered the 2 people at the front. Almost in an instant, the 2 of them turned into ashes. Xiao Hanyo and Xiao Hanyo looked at each other. Chapter 3490, Ice Block Talisman. Yun Chujio sighed in her heart. Xiao Hei's fire of nirvana was indeed awesome. It was just a pity that after using it once, it would take a long time before it could be used again. It would be fine if it could be used anytime. The three guards at the back watched as their companions turned into ashes. They could not help but look at the ugly fat bird that He Xingjiu was holding in fear. They could not care less about Instructor Lu who was inside. They turned around and ran out of the cave. They did not expect that after a few steps, one of their legs had sunk into a hole. The other two people's legs were also tightly bound by a few mycelium. The three of them were terrified. They could not care less about what was trapping them. They kept trying to break free and used wind blades to attack the thing that was binding them. Yun Chujio secretly let De Hua out. 10,000-year-old single pig attack. Kill them. This sentence worked every time. They didn't know what De Hua had experienced in the past. Anyway, after hearing this sentence, De Hua quickly turned dark and pounced on the three of them fiercely. The three of them were stunned when they saw De Hua. What the hell was this thing? Was it the materialization of spiritual power? How was that possible? The people of Towering Sky Continent had no way to master the materialization of spiritual power. However, the three of them quickly reacted and raised their spiritual power shields. Although they were trapped by the mycelium of Xiao He and Xiao Mogu, their spiritual power was much higher than Yun Chuji's. Therefore, De Hua's attack was blocked by their spiritual power shields. The three of them quickly got rid of Xiao He and Xiao Mogu's restraints and fought with De Hua. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. If this continued, De Hua would definitely not be a match for the three of them. After all, her spiritual energy was much lower than theirs. She thought to herself that she could actually use the talisman. However, she was afraid that if she used the talisman and caused the cave to collapse, it would be self-defeating. As she thought about it, she suddenly slapped her thigh. She was so stupid. She could not use the exploding talisman, but she could use another talisman. She still had the ice block talisman. This kind of talisman could slow down the enemy's movements. It would be a waste not to use it. Thinking of this, she took out a thick stack of ice block talismans and threw it at the three of them. The three of them were focused on fighting with De Hua. When they saw Yun Chujio throw a stack of talismans, they were shocked. However, they did not take it to heart. Such a thick stack of talismans was definitely not of high quality and should not have much effect on them. Therefore, the three of them did not try their best to avoid the talismans. A few of them landed on their bodies. The three of them suddenly slowed down. Even if it was only for a few seconds, it was enough to kill them. De Hua took this opportunity to smash his huge body directly at the three of them. Although the three of them managed to block the attack with their spiritual power shields, they had consumed a lot of spiritual power. They could only parry and could not fight back. He Xingjiu was immediately delighted. The ice block talismans in her hands were thrown at the three of them as if they were free. The three of them felt as if their hearts were going to explode. Where did this stinky girl get so many ice block talismans? After 15 minutes, the three of them finally could not hold on any longer. They were all killed by De Hua. Yun Chujio curled her lips. Just as she was about to return to the cave, she saw Instructor Lu Jiaoshi running towards her. It was obvious that he wanted to escape for his life. When Instructor Lu saw Yun Chujio, he raised his hand in exasperation. This place was so narrow. Where else could she escape to? She was doomed. Chapter 3491 touched the naughty children. He Xingjiu looked at the disheveled Instructor Lu and curled the corners of her lips. First, she raised her spiritual energy barrier to defend against Instructor Liu's palm. Then she threw a thick stack of ice block talismans at Instructor Lu. Instructor Lu was in a hurry to escape. Moreover, he was confident that Yun Chujio did not throw any high-level talismans because it was impossible for a child to have so many high-level talismans. Therefore he was miserable. Almost all the ice block talismans fell on his body, and his movements immediately slowed down. The children who were chasing after him swarmed up, and all kinds of spiritual weapons were thrown at Instructor Lu. He Xingjiu kept throwing ice block talismans at Instructor Liu's body, so that he had no way to fight back. After 15 minutes, Instructor Lu finally breathed his last reluctantly. He did not understand even before he died. How could the originally well-planned matter fail in the end? When the children saw that Instructor Lu Jiaoshi was killed, they immediately cheered up. Yun Chujio did not find Di Biming among the crowd. She was shocked and quickly separated the crowd to enter the cave. She saw Di Biming sitting cross-legged on the ground. His face was pale and his lips were purple. It was obvious that the fight just now had triggered the cold poison. Yun Chujio's heart ached, but she did not have any good ideas. Usually she kissed him a lot, but that thing had learned its lesson and did not fall for it again. At this time, those devilish children had already dragged a few corpses into the cave. Then they looked at He Xingjiu with admiration and gratitude. Yun Chujio was a little touched when she saw the devilish children's expressions. However, there were still some things that needed to be done. She smiled and said, "You were drugged by the devouring spirit powder. Although you ate the antidote, it was inevitable that there were some residual toxins. Come eat these pills." The devilish children were naturally not on guard against her. They took the pills and ate them. Then they passed out miserably. Hei Xinjiu let out the Meng Yanshou, then she ordered, "Weave a dream for them and hide the matter of the bones. Tell them that instructor Lu Jiaoxi is going to practice an evil technique. Also, hide the pretty boy's ice dragon and my big kitchen knife so as to avoid any trouble." Meng Yanshou immediately followed Hei Xinjiu's instructions and began to weave dreams for those devilish children. These devilish children did not have high spiritual power to begin with, and they were still in a deep sleep. Therefore Meng Yanshou easily completed the task. 15 minutes later, the devilish children woke up one after another and rubbed their eyes. Why were they still asleep after eating the king's medicinal pills? Yun Chujio said with a smile, "This king added some qi calming and spirit concentrating things into the pills. This can completely remove the spirit devouring powder from your body. Do you feel much more comfortable now than before?" The naughty children naturally felt much more comfortable after a short nap. Therefore they firmly believed Yun Chujio's words and were all grateful to her. Hei Xinjiu rubbed her nose guiltily and coughed a few times. Then she pointed at instructor Lu Jiaxi's corpse and said, "In the future the Li Hate Palace might investigate instructor Liu's whereabouts. Therefore, in order to avoid getting into trouble, after you return to the Juntiantian kingdom, directly hand over this corpse to the emperor and have him report the matter to the Li Hate Palace." The children were stunned for a moment. The little fatty was the first to react and asked, "Your Majesty, what do you mean by this? You want to separate from us?" Yun Chujio smiled bitterly and pointed at Di Biming who was meditating beside her. "As you can see, my brother's old illness is acting up, so I'm going to bring him to look for a famous doctor. I can't return to the country of June with you guys." Chapter 3492, Prime Minister Sima's voice transmission talisman. The children were very reluctant, but they could see that Yun Chujio could not change her mind. All of them were teary-eyed. Before this they might have been a little perfunctory towards this king, but now they really regarded this little girl as their king. The little fatty asked with a face full of reluctance, "King, then when your brother's illness is cured, will you still return to the Juntian kingdom to look for us?" Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. "That's hard to say. There's a chance I will definitely come to see you. You won't forget me, right?" Hearing Yun Chujio's words, the children expressed their loyalty one by one. Among them, the little fatty said the most exaggerated, "Your Majesty, you are our birth parents. If I forget you, Your Majesty, I will become a bastard in my next life." Hearing the children's words, Yun Chujio's eyes flashed with a faint light. "Good. In that case, when Your Majesty is in trouble in the future, you are not allowed to leave me in the lurch." The naughty children naturally agreed. Hei Xinjiu thought for a moment and took out a piece of paper. "Come, all of you sign your names and leave a memento for me." Those naughty children did not know that the person in front of them was a little devil who ate people without spitting out their bones. They immediately signed their names without hesitation. Seeing that the naughty children signed their names without missing a single one, Hei Xinjiu put away the piece of paper with a smile. Only then did she put away the piece of paper with a smile. "After you board the flying spiritual device, send a sound transmission talisman to your parents. I reckon that someone will come to pick you up very soon. The green mountains will not change and the green waters will flow forever. We'll meet again in the future." Yun Chujio said as she hugged her chubby little fist. The devilish children left the cave while crying. They rode on the flying spiritual device that they had found from instructor Lu Jiaxi's storage ring and left. Only then did Yun Chujio turn her head to look at Di Biming. After adjusting his breathing just now, although his face still looked a little pale, it was already better than before. "Prince Charming, it's not good to stay here for long. Let's leave too." Di Biming nodded, stood up, and the two little ones left the cave. After getting on the flying spirit tool, Hei Xinjiu immediately changed the appearance of herself and Di Biming and turned them into 8-year-old children. In order to prevent Juntian Nation from searching for the people in the Yulon Valley, they deliberately made a detour to Haotian Nation, which was the neighboring country of Juntian Nation. Although they might have to take more unnecessary roads, at least it was safer. Although they encountered some twists and turns on the way, with Hei Xinjiu's glib tongue and a belly full of evil tricks, the two of them finally arrived at the territory of East Phoenix Nation after half a month. Hei Xinjiu was so excited that she almost cried. At that time she had only helped Emperor Nanxian to borrow the dragon to kill people. Who would have thought that she would be struck by lightning and meeting Mo later on? Then, she tragically went to the capital of Star Sun Country, Starry Night City, and then to the Yulon Valley. However, it was a good thing that she found Ghost Face Orchid and refined the antidote for the rejuvenation pill. This could also be considered as opening up a new life-saving skill. Just as Hei Shinjio was sighing with emotion, she received a voice transmission talisman from Prime Minister Sima. When Yun Chujio heard the content of the voice transmission talisman, her face instantly darkened, and her eyes were filled with a fierce look. What's wrong? What happened? Di Biming's voice carried a bit of concern that she herself did not notice. Star Sun Kingdom sent a team of people to escort Lung Tianche and Yun Shiyu to the border of the two countries. Yes, it's the original Crown Prince and Princess Shiyu. They said that since I'm occupying the Magpie's Nest, the throne should be returned to Lung Tianche. If I don't agree, the Sun Nation will uphold justice and help Lung Tianche take back the throne. Chapter 3493, Miss Zhang's Territory. What do you plan to do? Di Biming was a little annoyed. If it wasn't for the fact that his old illness had relapsed, he would have killed those people directly to prevent the little rascal from wasting his energy. Yun Chujio slightly curled the corners of her lips. The Star Sun Kingdom only wants those two good-for-nothings to be puppets, and then slowly encroach on our East Phoenix Kingdom. Since they dare to play dirty tricks, then this emperor will directly make the Sky-High Continent no longer have the Star Sun Kingdom. Di Biming looked at the proud expression on Yun Chujio's face, and his heart beat violently. Soon after, a wave of pain struck him and he fainted. When Di Biming woke up, he found himself lying on the bed. He looked around and found that he was still in the cabin. He reckoned that he should still be on the flying spirit tool. When he was looking around, he felt that something was not quite right. He lowered his head to look at his body, and it actually turned into the appearance of a 3 or 4-year-old. Baby, you're awake? Yun Chujio's crisp voice came from the cabin door. Di Biming looked up. Yun Chujio had already returned to her original appearance. She looked at him with a smile. Di Biming was stunned for a while. Then he remembered what Yun Chujio said just now. Baby? Was she calling him? Baby, didn't you hear what little sister said? Why are you so naughty? Hei Shinjio walked to the bedside and poked Di Biming's forehead with her fair finger. Di Biming's body suddenly emitted a chill. The chill on his face seemed to have frozen into ice. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. Little Jio, what do you want to do? Yun Chujio poked a certain venerable small face with her hand. Baby, don't be angry. Your cold poison has acted up again. I can only make you smaller so that your symptoms can be alleviated. Heaven and earth, in doing this for your own good. Di Biming looked at her with a cold smile. If she didn't laugh so hard, perhaps he would still believe her words. He gritted his teeth and said, this venerable self can hold on. Give me the antidote. That won't do. We are about to reach the palace. If I bring you in without changing your appearance and let people see that you are injured, there will definitely be trouble. If I bring you in after changing your appearance, those people will think that their female emperor is a fickle woman. Hence, you can only appear in the imperial palace in the form of this little bun. I can just make up an excuse to cover it up, Hei Shinjio said with a straight face. Di Biming naturally did not believe her words. However, his current spiritual power was much weaker than before and he was no match for Yun Chujio. Furthermore, his body had also become smaller. He could only take a few deep glances at Yun Chujio. He said coldly, it's best if that's the case. Little Jio, if you do anything out of line, this venerable self will teach you a lesson sooner or later. Yun Chujio agreed with a smile on her face. This fellow's mouth twitched in his heart. Little fellow, today is the day you drink, today is the day you get drunk. When you come to the Little Miss territory, you will suffer. Under the arrangements of Prime Minister Sima and Yun Jichin, Yun Chujio sneaked back to the imperial palace without anyone noticing. Yun Chujio had long planned with Prime Minister Sima. After she went missing, Prime Minister Sima made up a story to fool Emperor Nanshan before leading his men back to the capital of the East Phoenix country. After returning to the capital, he told the public that she was in closed-door cultivation, so he did not attend the morning court. However, it was a good thing that Hei Shinjio was very lazy and rarely attended the morning court before, so she did not arouse any suspicion. When Prime Minister Sima saw that His Majesty had returned safely, he originally had a lot to say. However, when he saw the little boy held by His Majesty, he was instantly scared out of his wits. Chapter 3494. Yun Chujia's letter of credence. Prime Minister Sima looked at the cold and stern face of the little boy with a dumbfounded expression. Although his appearance was not very similar to that young Master D from before, but this temperament was clearly the son of the young Master D. Oh my god. This was the illegitimate child of their emperor? Apui. What illegitimate child? This was the crown prince of their East Phoenix kingdom. Oh my god. Their emperor's secrecy work is really good. He even said that he had entered some place by mistake and was unable to escape. Could it be that he had gone to fetch his son? The more Prime Minister Sima thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He solemnly said, Your Majesty, since you have brought the crown prince back, do you want to publicly announce his identity? Yin Chujia was drinking tea. When she heard Prime Minister Sima's words, the tea in her mouth immediately spurted out. Crown prince? This old man couldn't possibly think that the gigolo was her son, right? Di Biming's expression was even gloomier. What kind of master had what kind of slave? Could this old man be blind? Yun Chujia laughed so hard that she fell back and forth. However, when she saw Di Biming's ashen face, she immediately held back her laughter and said, Prime Minister Sima, you have misunderstood. This is not my son. This is an orphan that I picked up by accident. I've taken him as my god brother. Prime Minister Sima immediately said, Your Majesty, I understand all your difficulties. However, isn't it a difference in seniority to take him as my brother? It's better to take him as my godson. Yin Chujia was stunned at first. Then she laughed so hard that she almost fell to the ground. She had decided to give old man Sima a raise. This old man was too cute. She was happy. The cold air on Di Biming's body made Prime Minister Sima shiver. The old man was still lamenting in his heart. He was indeed young Master Di's son. This temperament and attitude were too similar. Yun Chujio finally stopped laughing and said, He really isn't my son. He really is my younger brother. It would be best if we could seal the news. However, just in case, you better make up a reasonable reason to prevent more trouble. Prime Minister Sima still felt that Yun Chujio was being stubborn. If this little boy was not the child of His Majesty and young Master D, his old man would have lived in vain. Although Prime Minister Sima thought so in his heart, he still nodded and agreed. Then he got down to business. Your Majesty, the envoys of the Xingsuan kingdom are still waiting for news. How should we reply? Yun Chujia's giggling expression immediately turned cold. She sneered and said, I will dictate and you will write. Prime Minister Sima immediately took out a pen and paper. His Majesty solemnly said, The matters of our East Phoenix kingdom have nothing to do with your Star Sun kingdom. Scram as far away as you can. Prime Minister Sima, Your Majesty, this is the national letter. Is it really alright to be so rude? Prime Minister Sima saw that their Majesty was determined to be like this. As long as he embellished He Xinjia's words, he would be refined. However, the main idea was still the same as what Yun Chujio had said. Yun Chujio looked at the national letter that Prime Minister Sima had embellished, took out the jade seal and stamped it. Then she said, In a while, send this national letter to the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom and tell him to get lost. In addition, have Crown Prince Yun lead an army of 100,000 soldiers to stand guard at the border. If the Star Sun Kingdom dares to cross the border, kill them without mercy. Although Prime Minister Sima felt that their Majesty's swift and decisive manner was quite bold, he said, Your Majesty, the Star Sun Kingdom's national strength is obviously stronger than our East Phoenix Kingdom. If we really shed all pretense of cordiality, we might not have a chance of winning. When Prime Minister Sima came to deliver the documents of the Star Sun Kingdom, he saw the scene in front of him and could not help but twitch the corner of his eyes. Your Majesty, you are your own mother. Is it really good for you to torture your own son like this? Prime Minister Sima could not help but advise tactfully, Your Majesty, the Crown Prince is still young. Let the palace maids do the work. As soon as he said that, a certain someone who was peeling the shell of a prawn for Hei Shinjio immediately pinched the prawn in his hand into a prawn meatball and stared at Prime Minister Sima with a gloomy face. Ahem, Prime Minister Sima, didn't I tell you before? He is really not my son. You can call him in the future. Hei Shinjio, who was useless at naming, could not come up with a suitable title after a long time. In the end, Prime Minister Sima said hesitantly, Why don't we address him as Young Royal Highness first? After you give him a title, well, just add a title to it. Hei Shinjio nodded, All right, well, do as you say. This fellow did not know that Prime Minister Sima sympathized with her in his heart. It was really not easy for His Majesty. He could not even acknowledge his own son. This was the saddest thing in the world. How pitiful. Chapter 3496. Let Empress D come over. After Prime Minister Sima left with a heavy face, Hei Shinjio glanced at a certain person who was peeling the shell of a shrimp and said slyly, "Son, peel it well." After saying that, the guy jumped hundreds of feet away, afraid that D Biming would punish her. She didn't expect D Biming to only look at her deeply and then continue peeling the shell of the shrimp expressionlessly. Hei Shinjio saw that D Biming did not pay attention to her and felt that it was meaningless. She went back to her seat and ate the shrimp. After eating a few prawns, Hei Shinjio reached out her evil claws and poked a certain someone's small face. The certain someone only frowned and did not say anything. A certain Jio was definitely someone who would take advantage of others. When she saw that D Biming did not say anything, she continued poking and poking. She even squeezed the certain someone's small face into a bun shape. A certain Jio still did not say anything. She did not even avoid Hei Xinjia's demonic claws. She only looked at Hei Shinjio coldly. Hei Shinjio instantly felt goosebumps when she was looked at. However, this guy comforted himself. The pretty boy was no match for her now. Moreover, he had become a little bean. What was there to be afraid of? If you don't take advantage of a bastard, it would be such a waste to waste such a good opportunity. Therefore, this guy continued to torture a certain someone even more. If it wasn't for the fact that a certain someone was now a little bean, this guy might have made a certain someone dance, strip, and dance. This guy even boasted shamelessly to a certain someone and said, "Baby, your emotions and desires have been sealed anyway, so you shouldn't know what it means to be angry, right? In that case, you won't take revenge on me in the future, right?" A certain honored warrior didn't even look at her and sneered in his heart. He had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires, but it didn't mean that he was a dead person. Very good. In a few more days, he would be able to recover as before, and he wasn't afraid of settling accounts. On this morning, Prime Minister Sima ran over in a panic. "Your Majesty, something bad has happened." The Star Sun Kingdom had joined forces with the Ghost Gold Kingdom and the Winged Fire Kingdom to form an alliance army of 3 countries to attack our East Phoenix Kingdom. Now the army had already reached the border. The Sun Nation has sent a letter stating that if you don't give up the throne, they will start a war. Yun Chujia's heart sank when she heard this. If it was just the Sun Nation alone, she would not be afraid. However, now that the 3 second-class nations had joined forces, she had no chance of winning at all. Prime Minister Sima sighed at the side. Why did their Majesty have so many disasters? As soon as she became the female emperor of the East Phoenix Kingdom, the 3 southern dragon kingdoms started to cause trouble. Soon after, the Jingmu Kingdom started to stir up trouble again. Now the 3 Star Sun Kingdoms wanted to force her to abdicate. This time there was really no room for negotiation. Yun Chujio thought for a moment and said, "You should first stabilize the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom and delay it for a few days." Prime Minister Sima nodded and then said tentatively, "Your Majesty, only the Empress can help you now. Why don't you send a message to the Empress and ask her to come over?" Empress D? The face of a certain someone who was peeling melon seeds for Hei Shinjio suddenly turned gloomy. Hei Shinjio coughed dryly and said, "He has something to do, so he might not be able to come here in time." Prime Minister Sima glanced at a certain someone and gritted his teeth. "Your Majesty, although there are some things that I shouldn't say, you and Empress D already have a son. What's the point of separating the 2 of you? If he didn't save her, that would be too much. What could be more important than the both of you?" Gotcha. The coffee table instantly turned into a pile of broken pieces. Prime Minister Sima couldn't help but shiver. Why did he suddenly feel a little cold? Chapter 3497. The Trash of Trash. Hei Shinjio coughed dryly. "You can go back first. I'll think about it again." Prime Minister Sima had no choice but to leave with a sigh. He lamented in his heart. His Majesty had a strong enemy outside the palace and a son inside that he could not acknowledge. It was not easy for him to find a woman who was heartless. Hei Shinjio looked at a certain someone with a cold expression and then at the broken pieces on the ground. She sighed. "Why are you throwing a tantrum? You even overturned my melon seeds." D Biming frowned and said, "You still have the mood to care about melon seeds now? What do you plan to do?" Yun Chujio spread her hands and said, "I don't know what to do either. Anyway, I won't give up the position of female emperor. There will be a way." Seeing her heartless look, D Biming's face became even darker. He frowned and said, "I asked Shui Wuji and Enfeng to help you. Although they are a little useless, they are still much stronger than you. Yun Chujio, if even a useless person was much stronger than her, then wouldn't she be a useless person among useless people? However, it had been a long time since he had seen Shui Wuji and Enfeng. Would be nice to meet them. Therefore He Xingjiu said happily, good. I want to meet Brother Wuji and the little lunatic. Di Biming felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Yun Chujia's happy look. However, he could not tell what the reason was. He sent a message to Shui Wuji and Enfeng with a gloomy face. Yun Chujio naturally would not just sit around and wait. She looked through the information she had gathered on the three kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom a few times, but the information she had was really limited. After a day, Prime Minister Sima came again in a hurry. Your Majesty, the emissary of the Star Sun Kingdom said that if we don't give him a reply today, he will leave tomorrow morning. Take it that we have rejected their request. Yun Chujio frowned. It seemed that the three kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom were determined to start a war. They must have taken a fancy to this piece of fat meat from the East Phoenix Kingdom and wanted to eat it. Prime Minister Sima saw that Yun Chujio didn't say anything and asked tentatively, Your Majesty, has the Empress replied to you? A certain honored warrior couldn't bear it anymore and said coldly, Prime Minister Sima, it's young Master D or the Emperor. It's not some damn Empress D. Prime Minister Sima was stunned at first, then he said earnestly, Young Royal Highness, your father is His Majesty's man, so he is naturally his mother. Calling him young Master D is really a little strange. Yun Chujio saw that Di Biming's expression was so cold that it was about to freeze. She quickly held back her laughter and said, Prime Minister Sima, this emperor will emphasize to you once again that you must call him young Master D in the future. Also, this baby is really not my son. Yes, this old subject will remember it. This old subject will not address you wrongly in the future. Then what did young Master D reply to your Majesty? Prime Minister Sima said respectfully. However, he sighed in his heart. This was already called a baby, what else could it be but a son? Their Majesty was simply the most pitiful woman in the world. Yun Chujio smiled and said, I'm afraid he won't be able to make it in time. Get his two subordinates to come over and help me. They will be able to arrive in a few days. Prime Minister Sima heard Yun Chujio say this. He could not help but feel a little disappointed. Your Majesty, even if young Master D comes over personally, he might not have a chance of winning. He only sent two subordinates over, I'm afraid it won't be of much use. Do you have any other countermeasures? Yun Chujio shook her head. For the time being, there isn't any good solution. Do your best to stabilize the envoy of the Star Sun Kingdom. If it really doesn't work, add some ingredients to his dishes at night. He won't be able to leave even if he wants to, such as laxatives. Chapter 3498. Besieging the way to save the Zhao. Prime Minister Sima could not believe his own ears. Giving laxatives to the emissaries of other countries? Your Majesty, don't you think that this is a little immoral? Prime Minister Sima glanced at Yun Chujio. Seeing that she did not look like she was joking, he could only nod his head. In his heart, he thought that he should think of other ways to persuade the emissaries of the Star Sun Kingdom. If it really did not work, he would use the method that His Majesty had suggested. If he did this, it would be the biggest stain in his life. At this moment, the voice transmission talisman in Yun Chujio's storage ring started to vibrate one after another. Yun Chujio took it out and took a look. It was sent by Emperor Nanxian and the other two. Yun Chujio could not help but curl her lips. She thought that these three old fellows were very calm, but she did not expect that they could not hold it in anymore. The content of the voice transmission talismans of Emperor Nanxian and the other two was basically the same. They were asking if the situation was serious and if she had any good strategies to solve it. Emperor Nanxian and the other two were now in the same boat as Yun Chujio. If Yun Chujio was forced to step down, they would not be able to recover either. Naturally, they were extremely concerned. Yun Chujio casually explained the current situation. Then she asked the three of them to gather the army and prepare to start a war. Although Emperor Nanxian and the other two were terrified, they didn't dare to ask any further. This was because they knew that if they offended Empress Jiao, they might not be able to hold on to their throne before the Sun Nation invaded. Yun Chujio put down the three people's voice transmission talismans, but her heart was moved. Back then, the three nations had joined forces to take care of the East Phoenix Kingdom, and she had used a counterplot to destroy the three nations. Could she do the same this time? He Xingjiu first let Prime Minister Sima go down, and then cupped her chin as she pondered. After thinking about it, she felt that it was basically impossible. The reason why the counterplot had succeeded back then was mainly because of her deep understanding of the situation of the various countries, and she had spies. However, she knew very little about the 3 countries of the Star Sun country, so the counterplot clearly had no effect. Di Biming saw that Yun Chujia's brows were tightly knitted, and a sense of helplessness welled up in his heart. If his cold poison had not relapsed, he could completely help the little rascal kill the emperors of the 3 countries, and the 3 countries would definitely fall into internal strife. This would temporarily alleviate the crisis of the East Phoenix Kingdom. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across Di Biming's eyes. He thought of the 2 bones that he had already found. If she was unable to survive this crisis, he could only take the risk in an emergency. Just as Di Biming was thinking about it, he heard Yun Chujio laughing sinisterly. That laughter was exactly the same as every time she tormented him. Di Biming subconsciously took a few steps back. Did she think of a new trick to torture him again? Hei Xingjiu reached out her claws and held a certain deity's little face. She kissed it a few times and then said excitedly, "Baby, I've thought of a good idea." Di Biming was too lazy to correct her. He quickly asked, "What good idea have you thought of?" Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Surround Wei and save Zhao." Di Biming had heard Hei Xingjiu mention the contents of the 36 strategies in the past, so he knew what it meant to surround Wei and save Zhao. His eyes flashed. "What do you want to do?" There are a total of 7 second-grade countries under the Jun Tian Kingdom. Currently, the Star Sun Kingdom, the Ghost Gold Kingdom, and the Winged Fire Kingdom have joined forces. As for the Willow Earth Kingdom, the Zhangyu Kingdom, and the Zhenshui Kingdom, they are not participating in the war because these 3 countries are not connected to the East Phoenix Kingdom. Even if they participate in the war, they will not get any benefits. If I can convince those 3 countries to stab the Star Sun Kingdom in the back, not only can I solve the current predicament, but I can also kill the Star Sun Kingdom. If I'm lucky, I can also take out the Ghost Gold Kingdom and the Winged Fire Kingdom. Aha, I'm so smart. Chapter 3499, Let's have a group battle. Di Biming's eyes flashed with admiration. Although the little rascal's spiritual power was a little useless, his brain was still very useful. However, Di Biming still poured cold water on Hei Xingjiu, who was so excited that she almost jumped up. Your method is naturally not bad, but how are you going to convince the other 3 countries? Moreover, time is tight now. Before you can convince the other 3 countries, I'm afraid that the armies of the 3 countries from the Star Sun country will attack. Yun Chujio was immediately awakened. That's right, she did not have the voice transmission talisman of the 3 kings. If she wanted to communicate with them, she could only send a letter. Most importantly, if she wanted to go to the 3 kingdoms, she would have to pass through the 3 kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom. They would definitely not let the envoys of the East Phoenix Kingdom go over. Even if they could think of a way to go over, it would waste a lot of time. By then it would be too late. While Hei Xingjiu was frowning, Di Biming said indifferently, "Those 2 trash might be able to help." Yun Chujio was stunned at first, then she hugged Di Biming and kissed him. "Baby, I love you so much. You are so smart. You are indeed my man. You are almost as smart as me." A certain lord was embarrassed and angry. "Stop fooling around. Why don't you think about what to do?" Hei Xingjiu finally let go of her evil claws, then took out a piece of paper and pen to write a national letter. She felt that the wording was a bit unrefined, so she had to call Prime Minister Sima back. When Prime Minister Sima arrived, Yun Chujio told him about her plan. Prime Minister Sima was stunned for a while, then he said with a face full of admiration, "Your Majesty, you are really a man of great talent and great strategy. It is the good fortune of the people of East Phoenix country to have a majesty like you. No, it is the good fortune of everyone in Towering Sky Continent." Hei Xingjiu was so proud that she almost could not control how many letters she sent. She managed to suppress the pride in her heart with great difficulty and said indifferently, "You are flattering me. I'm only a little smarter than the average person. Here, this is the national letter that I have drafted. You can polish it." Prime Minister Sima took the national letter that Hei Xingjiu handed over. When he saw the dog-like words on it, the corner of his mouth twitched. As expected, no one was perfect. The words of their majesty were really difficult to explain in one word. Prime Minister Sima polished the national letter that Yun Chujio had drafted. In fact, it was nothing more than plain English. "Your Majesty of a certain country, you also know that the 3 bastards of the Star Sun country are currently besieging our East Phoenix country. If our East Phoenix country is divided by them, then their strength will definitely be stronger than yours. In that case, It's inevitable that they will have designs on your three kingdoms in the future. In addition, even if your three kingdoms join their camp now, let's not talk about whether they agree or not. Even if they agree, you and our East Phoenix Kingdom are not close to each other, so you won't get any benefits. Now, an opportunity that can not only show your kingdom's pleasure in helping others, but also bring great benefits has arrived. That was, our East Phoenix country would delay the allied forces of the three countries, while your three countries would stab the Star Sun country in the back. They would definitely be able to take down the Star Sun country very quickly. When the time came, our four countries would join forces and annihilate the Ghost Gold country, and the Winged Fire country would be a piece of cake. When the time came, our four countries would divide the territory of the Star Sun country and the three countries equally. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Such a good opportunity was simply a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Therefore, we must not miss out on this opportunity. This opportunity is now or never. Quickly agree to our East Phoenix Kingdom's proposal. Let's have a team battle. Chapter 3500 was really fierce. Prime Minister Sima was completely in awe of their emperor's eloquence. If he were the emperor of the three kingdoms, he would definitely raise his hands and feet to express his approval. If such a good opportunity was wasted, it would be simply intolerable to the heavens. Yun Chujio took over Prime Minister Sima's embellished national letter and took a look. She curled her lips and said, "Prime Minister Sima, you are quite talented. It's just that your handwriting is a little ugly." Prime Minister Sima, don't you feel guilty saying that? His handwriting is ugly. It's simply 10,000 times better than your handwriting. Yun Chujio immediately told Shui Wuji the contents of the letter and asked him to forge 3 letters. As for the jade seal, he could just get a large radish to carve it. Shui Wuji and Enfeng immediately changed their route and went straight to the Willow Country. Yun Chujio thought for a moment. Even if Shui Wuji and Enfeng split up, the 3 countries would not immediately respond. It would take them a few days, hence, the most important thing now was to stop the 3 countries' alliance army from invading. Yun Chujio thought of this and immediately asked Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 to lead the army to the border. She also brought Di Baiming and Prime Minister Sima to the border. At this moment, the emissary of the Sun Nation who almost died in the latrine had already returned to the Sun Nation. The allied forces of the Sun Nation had also gathered and were ready to start a war at any time. When Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 saw He Xinjiu, their gazes were immediately attracted by the 3 to 4-year-old boy she was holding. Oh my, after not seeing each other for a few days, this Empress Zephyr had given birth to an illegitimate child? This girl was really fierce. A certain someone's eyes darkened. He swore to the heavens that he would never take that rejuvenation pill again, definitely not. He Xinjiu did not tell Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 about joining forces with the 3 kingdoms of the Willow Country. This matter was of great importance, so she naturally had to be more cautious. Therefore, Emperor Nanxian and the other 2 had worried looks on their faces. They felt that they were most likely going to be finished this time. However, they still felt a little lucky in their hearts. Perhaps that young Master Di of the female Emperor of Fenghua would come over to help. After all, his wife and son were here. They could not just leave them be, right? With that great weapon they might still have some hope of victory. Yun Chujio did not have the time to ponder over the thoughts of Emperor Nanxian and the other 2. She immediately brought her men to check out the terrain of the border. There was neither a valley as a place to set up ambushes nor a formation that prohibited flying. Could be said that if the alliance army of the 3 countries wanted to attack, there would be no obstruction at all. It was not realistic to dig a trap. After all, the border stretched for tens of miles, and there was no way to complete the trap in a short period of time. He Xinjiu took out the map and looked at it. Then her gaze fell on a winding river. At this moment, the atmosphere in the tent of the alliance army of the 3 countries was very warm. The generals felt that the East Phoenix country was simply not able to withstand a single blow, and it would not take long to take it down. The Star Sun country was the initiator country, and they had even sent their crown prince Xing Jinyuan over to supervise the battle. Therefore, everyone made Xing Jinyuan the commander of the alliance army of the 3 countries. Xing Jinyuan said with slight disdain, "The border of the East Phoenix country has no natural dangers to defend, and there are no large-scale formations. Once the war starts, the alliance army of the 3 countries will definitely be unstoppable, and we will take down the East Phoenix country in one fell swoop." Ghost Gold Kingdom's 7th Prince Jin Haokue agreed, "That's right. The East Phoenix Kingdom has been in turmoil for a period of time. Not to mention our 3 countries' alliance army, even if we take out any country they wouldn't be a match for us." Chapter 3501 was actually withdrawn. The third prince of the winged fire nation, Huaminji, frowned and said, "Don't underestimate your enemy too much. It is said that the female emperor of Zephyr Nation has a mysterious mind. For her to be able to become the female emperor of the East Phoenix Nation from a third-grade aristocratic family, she must have something extraordinary. It's just a rumor. What ability could a little girl have? Besides, even if she's a little powerful, she can still stop the allied forces of our three countries? I think she might send a surrender letter very soon," Jin Haokue retorted. Huaminji thought about it and agreed. No matter how powerful the female emperor of Zephyr was, she couldn't fight against the allied forces of the three countries alone, so he didn't say anything more. Everyone decided to wait another day. If the female emperor of Zephyr still didn't surrender, then they would start a war. Early the next morning, a general rushed over to report, "Marshal, the East Phoenix country's base opposite is very quiet. There isn't a single soldier. Should we go over and investigate?" Xing Jinyuan asked in puzzlement, "You said that there isn't a single person in the opposite base? Could it be that the East Phoenix country's people have been scared away by us?" Huaminji frowned. "I feel that this might be a trap set up by the female emperor of Zephyr Nation. When she fought with the Jingmu country previously, she used empty city traps and traps. Could it be that she has set up a trap in front of their main camp and is waiting for us to fall for it?" Although Xing Jinyuan felt that Huaminyi's words were a little alarmist, if they fell for the female emperor's trap in this first battle, it would definitely affect their morale. Thus he said, "What the third prince said makes sense. Just in case, General Feng, tell the soldiers to be careful and not fall into an ambush." Thus, General Feng led the soldiers carefully, and after some effort, they finally confirmed that there wasn't a single person in the East Phoenix Kingdom's camp. They had all retreated just like that. After Xing Jinyuan and the others received the report, they were all dumbfounded. They had actually all retreated? Wasn't the war not yet started? The people of the East Phoenix country had all retreated? Jin Haokue laughed out loud and said, "How is it? I told you that the East Phoenix country couldn't withstand a single blow. They would definitely flee when they heard the news. Who knows, that female emperor of Zephyr might surrender very soon." Huaminji disagreed and said, "If they were to flee when the wind blows, wouldn't that female emperor just send a letter of surrender? Would she need to bring her army along with her?" Everyone thought that it made sense. What was this female emperor up to? However, no matter what, they couldn't waste their time like this. They still had to seize the opportunity to pursue an attack. Thus, the allied forces of the three countries advanced towards the territory of the East Feng Kingdom. The allied forces of the three kingdoms had walked for several hundred li in a row. They had even passed by 2 empty cities, yet they still had not discovered the army of the East Phoenix Kingdom. Not to mention the army, they had not even seen a single one of the commoners. It was as if the people of the East Phoenix Kingdom had disappeared into thin air. In order to prevent themselves from falling into Yun Chujia's empty city plan or trap, the allied forces of the three kingdoms had to carefully scout every empty city or valley before they dared to continue forward. As a result, they had to stop and walk for several days. Xing Jinyuan and the others were very pleased with themselves at first. They thought that the people of the East Feng Kingdom had been scared out of their wits, so they had all escaped. However, things had unexpectedly gone smoothly, causing these people to feel a little uneasy. They had a feeling that something wasn't right. Could it be that they had fallen into the trap of the female emperor of Zephyr? However, thinking about it, even if there really was a conspiracy, the strength of the three kingdoms could still easily win. Hence, they continued to pursue. On this day, the three countries were blocked by a big river. Chapter 3502, River Styx. Reporting to Marshal, the river in front is the heaven-tracing river. Although it is forbidden to fly, there aren't any high-level water beasts in this river. Moreover, from the looks of it, it might be due to the lack of rain recently that the water level has dropped a little. The water surface is also very calm. It is completely possible to swim across. General Feng reported. Xing Jinyuan and the others stood by the riverside and looked towards the other side of the river. They did not discover the East Phoenix country's army. On second thought, although the heaven-tracing river's surface was very wide, it did not have any powerful water beasts. There was absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Just as Xing Jinyuan was about to give the order to cross the river, a general came over with an uneasy expression and reported, "Marshal, we found a huge rock in front. Please take a look." Xing Zenyuan's expression darkened slightly. What was there to see with a broken rock? However, he saw that the general's expression was conflicted. He still brought his men to the place that the general had mentioned. The soldiers surrounded the place from 3 layers to 3 layers. When they saw Xing Jinyuan coming over, they quickly moved aside, revealing a large rock inside. Xing Jinyuan focused his gaze and saw that the natural patterns of the large rock had formed 2 words: Netherworld. Xing Zenyuan's expression immediately became a little ugly. He naturally knew what Netherworld meant. This meant that if they wanted to cross the heaven-tracing river, they would be courting death? Where was this stone found? Xing Jinyuan asked gloomily. A few soldiers trembled as they said, "Marshal, this big stone was originally here. We didn't notice it at first, but we found a little bastard lying on top of this big stone. We wanted to catch it to make soup, but we didn't expect that little bastard to climb so quickly and disappear into the river. Then we saw that the patterns on this stone were somewhat strange." The soldiers also whispered to each other. The patterns on this stone were obviously formed naturally. Could it be a warning from the heavens? That little bastard could not have appeared on this huge stone for no reason. Perhaps it was to attract their attention. This was to warn them not to go any further. The soldiers then recalled that they had not seen a single person from the East Phoenix Kingdom. Perhaps the East Phoenix Kingdom had already known that the heaven-tracing river could stop the allied forces of the 3 kingdoms, so they had all retreated. When Jin Hao Kuei heard the soldiers' words, he could not help but snort coldly. It's just a piece of broken rock. How can it be so mysterious? It's just a coincidence. As Jin Hao Kuei spoke, he slapped his palm towards the huge rock. In his heart, he thought that if he were to smash this rock into powder, this rumor would naturally fall apart. Rumble. After a loud sound, the huge rock shattered into several pieces. However, what followed was a number of miserable screams. It hurt so much. My hand. Itch, my eyes. My eyes. Ow. My face. It turned out that as the huge rock exploded, a lot of poisonous water actually sprayed out from it. That poisonous water had a very strong corrosive nature. Regardless of whether it was clothes or skin, as long as they were touched by it, they would be corroded away. Many soldiers had their faces injured by the poisonous water. Jin Hao Kuei was the closest to the huge rock, so he was also the most severely injured. Not only was his face disfigured, his left eye was forcefully blinded by the poison. If it weren't for the many high-grade elixirs on him, he probably wouldn't have been able to keep his life. Some of the soldiers whispered, "Oh my God. No wonder the word Netherworld is written on the huge rock. So it's actually Netherworld water inside. It's too terrifying. Could this heaven-tracing river also be poisonous water?" My right eyelid had been twitching for the past few days and I kept feeling uneasy. I heard that the female emperor of Zephyr was a divine phoenix emissary. Why would she run away for no reason? Maybe she intentionally lured us here to the heaven-tracing river. Yeah, what you said makes sense. The heaven-tracing river seems peaceful. Maybe there really is some danger. Chapter 3503 Water Massacre. Xing Jinyuan saw the soldiers discussing fervently, and his face couldn't help but turn ashen. The battle hadn't even begun, and the morale of the army had already started to weaken. He said coldly, "This is just a small trick of the East Phoenix Kingdom. Whoever dares to make any further comments will be punished by military law." The soldiers immediately didn't dare to say anything more, but their hearts were filled with fear. They kept feeling that this heaven-tracing river was unusual. Xing Jinyuan and the others had discussed it. Now that the morale of the army was fluctuating, the best way was to quickly cross the heaven-tracing river. Otherwise the rumors would spread more and more. Therefore, the allied forces of the 3 countries did not rest and directly began to cross the river. The Star Sun country, the Ghost Gold country, and the Winged Fire country were not close to the sea, so they only carried a few large ships. It was obviously not realistic to transport all the troops there. Fortunately, the heaven-tracing river was calm, and there were no high-level demon beasts, so they could swim over. Therefore, Xing Jinyuan ordered the high-level generals to take the large ships over, while the ordinary soldiers had to swim to the other side on their own. At first, the soldiers were a little nervous. Was there any hidden danger in the heaven-tracing river? However, it was difficult to disobey the military orders, so they could only brace themselves and jump into the heaven-tracing river. However, seeing that the big ship carrying the high-ranking officers had reached the middle of the river without any problems, the soldiers became bolder. They were probably scaring themselves so nothing would happen. When most of the soldiers were in the river, someone vaguely heard a sound which seemed to be the sound of a huge current. While everyone was puzzled, the sound of the roar became louder and louder. There was a huge current pouring down from the upstream. When everyone saw the huge current rushing towards them, they were instantly thrown into chaos. Some soldiers tried their best to climb onto the boats, while others turned around and ran towards the shore. All of a sudden they stepped on each other, screams and screams could be heard continuously. In an instant the huge current rushed down. What was worse was that there were vines and water plants in the current. Those soldiers had no way to break free and could only follow the direction of the current and be washed down. Even the few large ships carrying high-ranking generals were overturned by the huge waves. The generals fell into the water one after another and were washed down with the current. On the shore, Xing Jinyuan and the others were both shocked and annoyed. What was going on? Why did the flood suddenly start? Marshal, the downstream is filled with cliffs and cliffs. Moreover, it is forbidden to fly. Regardless of whether our soldiers return from the waterway or take a detour, it will take at least half a day or even a day. And we only have less than 1/5 of our troops left. If the people of the East Phoenix Kingdom launch a sneak attack on us, we will most likely be in deep trouble. Therefore we should retreat first. Huaminji suggested. Jin Haoki's face was covered with a thick white cloth. He gritted his teeth and said, "You are right. Whether it is that big rock or the flood, it is most likely that the woman emperor of the Zephyr Nation's vicious scheme. If we don't retreat we might fall into her trap. That bitch, if I catch her, I'll definitely tear her into pieces." Xing Jinyuan saw that the two of them had said so and immediately ordered Bai Li to retreat to avoid being ambushed by the East Phoenix Kingdom. They would wait until the troops had regrouped before discussing a good plan to cross the river. Who would have thought that the next day at noon, there would be soldiers running back one after another? The wounded General Feng almost cried out, "Marshal, the East Phoenix Kingdom has set up an ambush on the cliffs on both sides of the lower reaches of the river. We were disoriented by the river water, and we were entangled by vines and aquatic plants. We were like living targets. We suffered heavy casualties." Chapter 3504 had even more surprises waiting for you. Xing Jinyuan was stunned when he heard General Feng's words. Then he questioned loudly, "What did you say? Say it again." "Marshal, our people were ambushed in the lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river. They suffered heavy casualties." General Feng repeated. Xing Zenyuan's head buzzed. Yes, both sides of the lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river were steep cliffs, and most of them were submerged reefs. It was simply the best place to set up an ambush. He recalled the Netherworld stone from before. The original intention of the East Phoenix Kingdom was not to use that stone to cause any harm to the allied forces of the three countries, but to force him to immediately give the order to cross the river. This way, he would not have the time to carefully examine the terrain and the surrounding situation. The East Phoenix Kingdom must have built a dam upstream. When they saw the army enter the river, they blew up the dam. This could explain why there was a flood all of a sudden. Moreover, the female emperor of Zephyr had calculated that once there was a flood, the remaining troops would not dare to cross the river by force. She could rest assured and deploy all her troops to the lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river to ambush them. This was a chain of events. The female emperor of Zephyr was indeed good at scheming. Xing Jinyuan had not put Yun Chujiu in his eyes before, but this defeat immediately made him sober up a little. Jin Haokue said in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Marshal, are we just going to suffer this loss? If it were up to me, after we gather our troops, we should immediately force our way across the river. We don't want to cause any more trouble." Xing Jinyuan looked at him unhappily. He was a little displeased with him. If it weren't for his bad temper that shattered the Netherworld stone, he wouldn't have ordered them to cross the river immediately. It was really a waste of time. Xing Jinyuan was displeased, but because of the relationship between the two countries, he could only suppress his displeasure and say, "Seventh Prince, our soldiers have just been ambushed by the East Phoenix country. They will need to rest for at least 2 days. If they are in a hurry to attack, they might fall into the trap of the female emperor of Zephyr." Jin Haokue wanted to say something, but Huaminji said, "Let's do a head count first. Then we will send people to the upstream and downstream to check. If there are no abnormalities, we will cross the river again. It is safer this way." Xing Jinyuan nodded, and then ordered his men to immediately do it. The next morning, General Feng reported the casualty figures that he had calculated. The East Phoenix country had actually relied on a flood to wipe out 50,000 allied troops. Although Xing Jinyuan was mentally prepared, when he heard the number 50,000, his head still buzzed. They hadn't even fought head-on, yet they had already lost 50,000 men. If this was spread out, it would be a great humiliation. The three-country alliance army rested for 2 days and sent people to check the upper and lower reaches of the heaven-tracing river carefully. After confirming that there was nothing unusual, they prepared to cross the river again. Just as Xing Jinyuan was about to give the order to cross the river, General Feng pointed to the other side of the river and said, "Marshal, there seems to be a person on the other side." As the heaven-tracing river was very wide, Xing Jinyuan could only vaguely recognize that there should be a person standing on the other side. Just as Xing Jinyuan and the others were feeling suspicious, a clear voice came from the other side of the river. "Hey! Wasn't the flood that I sent you a few days ago a pleasant surprise? Hurry up and cross the river. There will be even more pleasant surprises waiting for you later." Xing Jinyuan and the others immediately guessed the identity of the speaker. It was actually that damnable female Emperor of Zephyr. That was because other than her, no other woman would call herself Emperor of Zephyr. After that, the female Emperor of Zephyr slipped into the bushes by the shore and disappeared. Chapter 3505. The sour taste. The allied forces of the three kingdoms were instantly in an uproar. That female Emperor of Zephyr was really too despicable. Was that called a surprise? It was clearly a shock. She said that there would be another surprise? Oh God, the flood was already scary enough. What terrifying thing had she prepared this time? Xing Jinyuan and the others were also bewildered. Although the upstream and downstream had already sent people to investigate and there was nothing unusual, when they heard what Empress Jiao said, they couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Humph. I heard that when the Zephyr female emperor fought with the Jingmu kingdom, she once played the empty city trick. This time she may be deliberately mystifying things, but in fact nothing happened at all. If it were up to me, let's rush over and ignore the nonsense. I want to cut that bitch into 1,000 pieces right now. Jin Haokue thought of his blind eye and hated Empress Jiao to death. Huominji disagreed and said, that might not be the case. Maybe she is deliberately doing the opposite and making us think that she is using an empty city tactic. In fact, she has already set up an ambush to lure us into a trap. For a time, everyone agreed with Jin Haokue and Huominji. Both sides had their own opinions, and the original head of Xing Jinyuan was furious. If not for the flood incident, the original head of the punishment town would have ordered to cross the river directly. However, he had lost 50,000 people in the first encounter, so he had to be careful. Otherwise, his prestige would be greatly reduced. Perhaps the position of marshal would be taken away by Huominji. After weighing the pros and cons, the original head of the punishment town had to send a few hundred people to cross the river first to check it out. In this way, even if there was danger, the losses would not be too great. The few hundred unlucky people who were chosen to cross the river first were so angry that they wanted to bang their heads against the wall. Why did they have to be the scapegoats? The female emperor of Fenghua across them was as cunning as a fox. She must have set up an ambush in the river. If they went into the river, they would definitely be in deep trouble. However, it was difficult to disobey a military order, so they could only brace themselves and go into the river. Because they were afraid of an ambush, the group of people were trembling with fear and walked very slowly. They swam all the way to the center of the heaven-tracing river and nothing unusual happened. Only then did they feel a little more at ease. After a long time they finally reached the other side. They were afraid that there was an ambush in the grass by the shore, so they used their spiritual power to test it out. However, there was nothing unusual. Only then did they carefully climb to the other side. They were pleasantly surprised to find that nothing had happened. Damn it, it was another empty city trap. Seeing that those people had safely gone ashore, Jin Haokue curled his lips and said, "How was it? I told you it was an empty city trap, right? Hurry up and let the army go over, or else that female emperor of Zephyr will run away again." Xing Jinyuan nodded and immediately gave the order for everyone to cross the river. Finally, all the soldiers of the three countries' allied army passed through the heaven-tracing river and reached the opposite bank. Xing Jinyuan heaved a long sigh of relief in his heart. They had finally come over. In order to speed up their progress, the three countries' allied army only made a simple adjustment and then quickly moved forward. They were prepared to pass through this no-fly zone and ride on flying spirit tools to catch up with the East Feng Kingdom's army in front. Not long after they walked out, they heard a miserable shriek coming from the front. Large swathes of land began to collapse, and there were poisonous blades stuck in the ground. Due to the no-fly zone and the large area of the collapse, there was simply no way to avoid it. Although the soldiers had set up their spirit energy shields to protect themselves, they were unable to withstand the pressure, pushing, and trampling of the soldiers in order to protect themselves. For a time, cries of grief filled the field. This was not all. Suddenly, many soldiers of the East Phoenix Kingdom appeared in front of them, throwing countless talismans, chili powder, and poison powder at them. Only then did the allied forces of the three countries tragically discover that the wind direction today was blowing towards their side. For a moment, the sour and refreshing feeling was simply excruciating. Chapter 3506. What other schemes does Empress Jiu have? The situation was out of control. No matter how Xing Jinyuan commanded, no one would listen to him. They all sought ways to protect themselves. The army at the back saw this and jumped into the river in a panic. At least the river was safe. Who would have thought that there would be countless large ships coming down from the upstream and launching an attack on them? On the ship at the front stood a beautiful girl. It was none other than Empress Jiu. Xing Zenyuan's head was buzzing. He had fallen into another trap. Previously, the female emperor of Zephyr Nation had deliberately given up the two cities in order to buy time and set up this trap. However, he was puzzled. He had clearly surveyed the upstream and did not find any troops of the East Feng Kingdom. Moreover, there were cliffs on both sides of the river. How did these troops of the East Feng Kingdom suddenly appear? How would he know that the East Feng Kingdom had a monkey like Empress Jiu? After the three countries' allied forces had finished surveying, this fellow had used ropes to drag everyone up. As for the person who had spoken earlier, he was merely a soldier who was good at imitating people's words. Xing Jinyuan was at a loss as to what to do at this moment. Huaminji said from the side, "Marshal, the morale of the army is in chaos now. Moreover, the area of the poison blade trap set up by the East Feng Kingdom is quite large. I'm afraid that we won't be able to pass through in a short period of time. Why don't we turn back and capture the female emperor of Zephyr? This way the East Feng Kingdom's army will naturally fall by itself." Jin Haokue echoed, "That's right. To capture a thief we must first capture the king. It'll be easy to deal with that slut once we capture her. Damn it, I didn't expect that slut to be so good-looking. If we capture her, it'll definitely torture her properly." Xing Jinyuan wished he could kill him with a single slash. At this point in time he was still thinking about those things. What a waste. Xing Jinyuan immediately ordered the army to turn around and attack the East Feng army on the river. When the three-nation coalition army jumped into the river and was ready to surround the ships of the East Feng Kingdom, those ships suddenly accelerated and instantly pulled a distance apart. Hei Xinjiu stood on the deck and said with a smile, "A bunch of idiots. Come and chase us if you have the ability." Xing Jinyuan was almost angered to death. They only had a few ships in total, and it was impossible for them to catch up with the fleet of the East Phoenix country by relying on manpower alone. They could only watch as the fleet disappeared without a trace. Standing in the river, the allied forces of the three countries felt that they were all idiots. Ever since they entered the territory of the East Phoenix country, they had not even fought a proper battle. They had been toyed with like grandsons by the Zephyr Empress. What bullshit allied forces of the three kingdoms. If this carried on, they would be completely annihilated. Xing Jinyuan gritted his teeth. He had just brought his soldiers ashore and was prepared to go over after filling in the traps. Then he heard Empress Jiu's wretched voice transmitted over. "Hey idiots, I'm back again. Come and catch me. Whoever doesn't dare to come is a turtle bastard." Xing Jinyuan had no choice but to bring his soldiers back to the water to attack the fleet of the East Feng Kingdom. Before they could even fight, the fleet of the East Feng Kingdom had already run away. After a few times, when Empress Jiu provoked them again, Xing Jinyuan did not order them to return to the river. Instead, he ordered them to do their best to fill in the traps. Seeing that the provocation was no longer effective, Empress Jiu did not continue to provoke them. Instead, she crossed her arms on the deck and watched calmly as the allied forces of the three kingdoms filled in the traps in the distance. Seeing this, the three-nation coalition army could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. This Empress Fenghua had a belly full of evil water. Could there be a conspiracy waiting for them? Chapter 3507. Their Majesty was not human on the deck. Prime Minister Sima's admiration for their Majesty could no longer be expressed in words. The old man asked with his starry eyes, "Your Majesty, the allied forces of the three kingdoms have already lost 80,000 to 90,000 troops. Moreover, we have already formed a pincer attack from both inside and outside. Should we launch a general attack and fight them head-on?" The corners of Yun Chujia's lips curled up. "No, pass down the order. While the allied forces of the three kingdoms are filling in the traps, Get the people on the shore to retreat quickly. Prime Minister Sima was very puzzled by Yun Chujia's decision. Your Majesty, this is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. If we retreat again, we will have to give up 2 more cities before we can retreat to Boulder City, which has a no-fly formation. Why are you doing this? Yun Chujio smiled faintly. If we kill them all, the 3 kingdoms will send another army and there will be even more of them. At that time, we may not be able to hold out for a long time, so we will have to keep these idiots. Their role is to help us stall for time. Prime Minister Sima was stunned for a long while before he understood Yun Chujia's meaning. His Majesty wanted to hang Xing Jinyuan and the others. Although it had dampened their spirits, he still wanted to give them hope. This way, the 3 kingdoms of the Sun Nation would not continue to send their armies over. Only then would the East Phoenix Kingdom be able to hold out for a period of time and wait for news from the 3 kingdoms of the Willowland Nation. Prime Minister Sima felt that His Majesty was simply not a human. His thoughts were always unexpected. It often made one feel that they had guessed correctly, but in the end they discovered that it was not the case at all. Prime Minister Sima immediately ordered the people on the shore to quickly retreat to Boulder City. At the beginning of the war, Yun Chujio had already sent people to settle all the civilians in other cities. Therefore, the few cities near the border had long been empty. Yun Chujio felt that it was about time. She stretched her neck and shouted, "Hey idiots! I don't have time to play with you anymore. See you later." After He Xingjiu said that, she immediately led the fleet upstream and soon disappeared. Xing Jinyuan was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. He wanted to go upstream to stop them, but he was afraid that he would be ambushed, so he could only give up. "Marshal, I think that stupid girl has run out of tricks. Otherwise, the army in front of her and her wouldn't have escaped just like that. They are relying on this heaven-reaching river. There is no such river anymore. Sooner or later, she will fall into our hands," Jin Haokue said with a cold smile. Huominji frowned. "I have a feeling that something is not right. The East Phoenix Kingdom has already formed a pincer attack on us from both inside and outside. Why doesn't she make a move?" Jin Haokue snorted. "Although they have formed a pincer attack from inside and outside, many of their soldiers are from the original third-grade countries. Their spiritual power is lower than our soldiers. Naturally, she doesn't dare to confront them head-on. She can only use some unorthodox methods." When Xing Jinyuan and Huominji heard this, they felt that what he said made sense. This could also explain why the East Phoenix country wanted to give up on surrounding them. Finally, the allied forces of the 3 countries filled up all the traps before they gave chase once again. After passing through 2 cities in a row, they were all empty. Not a single person was there until a towering city blocked the path of the allied forces of the 3 countries. "Marshal, ahead is Boulder City. It is said that this city got its name because there were many boulders here before. Later, the commoners used those boulders to build this Boulder City. Boulder City is very sturdy. It is easy to defend but hard to attack. I'm afraid we will need to spend a lot of effort to take it down," General Feng explained. Chapter 3508 Giant Rocks. Xing Jinyuan and the others looked at the city. Indeed, the city was made of giant rocks and it looked extremely sturdy. On the city wall stood the soldiers of the East Phoenix Kingdom. They were ready for battle. Xing Jinyuan felt that the allied forces of the 3 kingdoms had been attacking for days, so he did not order them to attack the city. Instead, he asked the soldiers to set up camp on the spot and then make a long-term plan. On the other side of the city wall, Empress Jiu was curiously looking at the huge rock that was piling up the city wall. The corners of Prime Minister Sima's eyes twitched. His Majesty's heart was really big. At this time, what was there to see with this broken rock? Back when the 4 kingdoms of the Dongfeng Kingdom had taken over the capital of the Jingmu Kingdom, the generals and guards of Boulder City had already surrendered when they saw the situation. Therefore, Yun Chujio didn't pay much attention to Boulder City. After arriving today, she realized that Boulder City was quite interesting. It was because the materials of these boulders were actually the same as the materials of the stone beasts at the gates of the Origin Killing Sect and the Origin Mixing Sect. Logically speaking, these boulders should be treated as treasures. After all, the stone beasts made from them could generate intelligence. Yet, they were actually built into a city wall just like that? What a waste of natural resources. However, on second thought, He Xingjiu estimated that it would take a very long time for the stone beast to generate intelligence, so no one bothered to do that. He Xingjiu's heart moved again. The stone beast needed a very long time to gain intelligence, but not the puppets. She only had 5 puppets made from 1,000-year-old black iron. If she were to forge all the stones on the city wall into puppets. Prime Minister Sima was stunned to realize that His Majesty had gone mad. His Majesty was actually smiling at the huge stone on the city wall like a fool. He called out a few times but there was no response. Prime Minister Sima could only look at a certain Jiao who had a cold expression on her face. Di Biming glanced at a certain Jiao who was smiling foolishly. He was most familiar with this kind of smile. This fellow had always been greedy for money. He was afraid that he could tell that this stone was unusual. However, although this huge black stone was extremely sturdy, it could not be refined into a spiritual weapon. Other than being used as a city wall, it did not have much use. What was the little rascal planning to do with it? He Xinjiu laughed foolishly for a long time. She wished that she could get a huge stone right now to go back and test it out. However, the current situation was special, so she could only endure it. Thinking of this, he took out Shui Wuji's voice transmission talisman and asked, "Brother Wuji, how are things going?" Very soon, the voice transmission talisman began to tremble. Shui Wuji's smug voice came from inside. The three kingdoms of the Willow Country have agreed to establish an alliance with US and are mobilizing their troops. They will launch a sneak attack on the Star Sun country very soon. Little sister Jiao, wait for my good news. Yun Chujiu replied to Shui Wuji with a smile and told Di Biming and Prime Minister Sima about the news. Prime Minister Sima was so happy that he almost jumped up. There was finally hope. Di Biming's brows also relaxed a little. If the three kingdoms did not agree to form an alliance, he could only take the risk and try other methods. At this moment, He Xinjiu faintly said, "Don't be happy too early. We are using the tiger to drive the wolf. Once the three kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom are destroyed, the three kingdoms of the Lu Tu Kingdom will definitely think of a way to destroy our East Phoenix Kingdom." Prime Minister Sima's face stiffened. Although he was unwilling to admit it, he thought about it carefully and realized that His Majesty's worry was completely necessary. His Majesty had a saying. There was no eternal enemy, no eternal friend, only eternal interests. Now that they had the same goal, the three kingdoms of the Willow Country had formed an alliance with their East Phoenix Kingdom. Once the three kingdoms of the Sun Kingdom were destroyed, the three kingdoms of the Willow Country would definitely turn their attention to their East Phoenix Kingdom. Chapter 3509 introduced another wolf. When Prime Minister Sima thought of this, he asked with a heavy expression, "Your Majesty, then what should we do?" Yun Chujiu laughed crisply, "What's there to be afraid of? If it really doesn't work, why don't we just bring in another wolf?" Bring in another wolf? Prime Minister Sima was confused. What did His Majesty mean by this? Di Biming spat out three words calmly, "Juntian Kingdom." Prime Minister Sima was stunned for a moment before slapping his thigh. "I understand. Your Majesty, you mean that after destroying the three kingdoms of the Star Sun Kingdom, you will think of a way to point the spearhead of the three kingdoms of the Lu Tu Kingdom at Juntian Kingdom? With this, the three kingdoms of the Lu Tu Kingdom can only temporarily continue to form an alliance with us. Your Majesty, you are really too smart. The young prince is indeed worthy of being the son of you and young Master Di. He is truly incomparably smart. I am ashamed to be inferior to him." Di Biming, Prime Minister Sima trembled. Why was it so cold? He glanced at Di Biming's cold expression and could not help but feel his legs go soft. Did he say something wrong? Prime Minister Sima instinctively took a few steps back and quickly came up with an idea. He began to change the topic. "Your Majesty, if we can really destroy the Juntian Kingdom at that time, I'm afraid that the three kingdoms of the Willow Country are not as easy to fool as the three kingdoms of the Southern Dragon Country. How can you make them give up the throne of the Emperor of the Juntian Kingdom?" Yun Chujiu smiled mysteriously. "I have my own ways to make the former subjects of the Juntian Kingdom support me as their emperor. As for the three kingdoms of the Willow Country, if they are obedient, they will be treated the same as Emperor Nanxian and the others. If they are not obedient, I will let my fiancé kill their emperor. Sai, who asked me to have a powerful fiancé. I will anger them to death." When a certain someone who was emitting cold air heard the last two sentences of Yun Chujiu, he felt an inexplicable sweetness in his heart. He even looked at Prime Minister Sima more pleasing to the eye than before. Although Prime Minister Sima was extremely curious about what secret weapon His Majesty had, he did not dare to ask further and found an excuse to escape. Yun Chujiu felt that the allied forces of the three countries would not attack the city tonight, so she and Di Biming went to the city lord's residence in Boulder City to rest. She had been traveling for days and had not had a good rest, so she went to bed early. A certain someone could not fall asleep. On one hand, he was anxious that his frost poison had not been good. On the other hand, Yun Chujia's coquettish or cunning appearance kept flashing through his mind, making his heart itch. However, when he thought about it, the frost poison had a tendency to worsen, so he could only deliberately avoid it. He thought of the previous blue marble and felt that he had something to do with the Li Hate Palace looking for blue marble. He did not think that a mere Li Hate Palace had the ability to know his weakness. After all, even he had only just found out that blue marble would trigger his cold poison. Then who was the person behind the Li Hate Palace? A trace of determination flashed through Di Biming's eyes. It seemed that after his body recovered, he needed to remove another layer of seal. Otherwise, there would be no way to solve the mystery behind it, and there would be no way to take back what belonged to him. And there would be no way to protect little Jiu. The next day during breakfast, Di Biming asked, "What do you want to do with those giant rocks?" He Xingjiu giggled. "Make puppets. I only have 5 puppets made of 1,000-year-old black iron. I'm going to turn those giant rocks into stone puppets, the very big kind. With so many giant rocks, it's enough for me to make a small team of puppets." Di Biming frowned. "You're thinking too simply. Whether it's refined iron or dark steel, they can all be refined into puppets. How are you going to refine these boulders into puppets? Even if you turn them into puppets, their bodies won't be able to function flexibly. What's the use?" Chapter 35 Tenit on time. Yin Chujio was instantly dumbfounded. That's right, Shi Yuan sect and Hun Yuan sect Stone Pai Xiao and Stone Lion had gained intelligence, so the stone body could have a certain degree of flexibility. The puppet plate definitely couldn't do it, so could her separated spiritual sense do it? Although He Xingjiu wished she could give it a try right now, the enemy was right in front of her. If she tore down the city wall, she would probably be beaten up by the group, right? Therefore, she had no choice but to temporarily suppress the restless desire in her heart. After eating breakfast, she climbed up the city wall to check on the situation of the Three Kingdom Coalition army on the other side. Just as He Xingjiu was checking, the sky suddenly darkened. He Xingjiu instantly had an ominous premonition in her heart. Fuck, could it be that the heavenly lightning was coming to strike her? This damnable heavenly lightning would not come sooner or later, but it had to come at this time. It was simply fatal. If the soldiers found out that their majesty was being struck by the heavenly lightning, their morale would definitely fluctuate. The most fatal thing was that it might destroy the flight-prohibiting formation. Therefore, she could only leave Boulder City to lure the heavenly lightning away. This fellow had wanted to lure the heavenly lightning into the Three Kingdom Alliance's camp, but there were too many people in the Three Kingdom Alliance. If things went wrong, he might lose his life. Therefore, this fellow had decided to leave the North City and come back after enduring the heavenly lightning. He Xingjiu called Prime Minister Sima over and ordered in a low voice, "I'm going out to walk the heavenly thunder. Guard the city well. Be alert, don't let the Three-Nation Alliance attack the city while the sky is dark. The most important thing is to protect the young Royal Highness. If anything happens to him, I won't forgive you." Walk the heavenly thunder? Prime Minister Sima was dumbfounded. He had seen how His Majesty looked like when he was struck by lightning, therefore, he could only nod and say, "Rest assured, Your Majesty. This Boulder City is extremely sturdy. It shouldn't be a problem to defend it for a few days. Even if I have to risk my life, I will protect the young prince." Yun Chujio nodded in satisfaction. "I reckon that the 3 kingdoms of the Willow Country will soon launch an attack. If you can defend it for 3 to 5 days, you will be able to escape. If there are any problems, you can just ask the young prince. He has a way to contact my fiancé's 2 subordinates." When Prime Minister Sima heard Yun Chujio say this, he immediately panicked. "Your Majesty, didn't you just go out to walk the thunder? Are you not coming back?" Yun Chujio said faintly, "It's hard to say. You know that the last time Your Majesty went out to walk the thunder, it took me so long to come back. I'm just taking precautions." Prime Minister Sima was about to cry. "Your Majesty, you should try your best to come back. All of US combined don't have your guts." Yun Chujio comforted Prime Minister Sima, then she brought Di Biming to the side and said, "I'm going out to walk Lei. To prevent me from accidentally entering another realm, here are 2 antidotes for rejuvenation pills. You can take them as you see fit. Oh right, here are the pastries I prepared for you. You can eat them slowly. Be good, baby. You have to grow up. You must remember to eat on time." Hei Xinjiu did not care about Di Biming's reaction and ran away in a hurry. It was not that she did not want to say more, but the dark clouds in the sky converged at a very fast speed. In just a short while the sky had turned dark. If she did not speed up and draw the heavenly lightning away, the heavenly lightning would probably break the formation core of Boulder City. Di Biming looked at Yun Chujia's back and felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He subconsciously opened the paper bag in his hand and was stunned. Chapter 35:11 Vanishing into thin air. There weren't any pastries in the paper bag, but several small porcelain bottles. Di Biming didn't need to open them to know that they must be Yun Chujia's blood. In fact, after he was poisoned by the cold, Yun Chujio had tried to use her blood to alleviate his symptoms a few times, but he had sternly rejected all of them. He thought that she had given up on this idea, but he didn't expect that she had already prepared all of this beforehand. He recalled the last time when he fainted on the flying spirit tool, and when he woke up he felt a little better. He thought that it was because his body had become smaller, but now that he thought about it, it should have been after he fainted. Little Gio must have fed him blood. When Di Biming thought of this, a sharp pain surged in his heart, and then his limbs and bones were filled with pain. He knew that because of the pain and guilt he felt at that moment, he had broken through the seal of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Therefore the cold poison was even more intense. Di Biming did not immediately seal the 7 emotions and 6 desires again. Instead he took out the voice transmission talisman for Yun Chujio and said word by word, "Little Gio, the reason why I sealed the 7 emotions and 6 desires is because I know that no matter what I become, as long as I have one breath left, I will fall in love with you again. Therefore, no matter what the situation is, you must believe that I am in love with you. I know all the grievances you have suffered. Believe me, I will find a way to restrain the cold poison. At that time I will be at your disposal." After Di Biming finished speaking he could no longer hold on. He sat cross-legged on the ground and resealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires. Not far away Prime Minister Sima had a dumbfounded expression. What was the little crown prince doing? Why did he look so pained when he saw the item His Majesty had given him? Could it be that he missed his mother? That's right. He was left alone at such a young age. He would definitely feel terrible. On the other side Hei Xinjiu was running wildly. Although she noticed that there was a sound transmission talisman vibrating in her storage ring, she did not bother to look at it. This was because if she did not run quickly, heavenly lightning would strike. Finally they had passed the no-fly zone. Hei Xinjiu summoned her flying spiritual tool and flew toward a valley. The reason she chose the valley was to reduce the level of damage. She could not run to another city, right? Wu Yun in the sky was chasing after her relentlessly. Thinking of what happened last time, it was so angry that it almost fainted. This damn brat used it to break the seal of the Candle Sky Valley. She was playing it like a fool. How outrageous. She must be hacked to death today. Hei Xinjiu landed the flying spiritual device in the valley and sat cross-legged on the ground. She said lazily, "Hey my dear Xiao Yunyan, how did you know that I wanted to be struck by lightning recently? You came at the right time. This time you must hack me properly. I happen to want to reach the spiritual stage. If you perform well, I won't scold you anymore." Wu Yun in the sky was so angry that she was trembling. Dear Xiao Yunyun? To whoever loved this little pervert, she was its enemy. No, she was its mortal enemy. Today she was dead for sure. It was still a familiar formula and a familiar smell. Wu Yun struck fiercely as soon as it came in, wishing that she could kill Hei Xinjiu right away. Hei Xinjiu was not particularly flustered. After all, she had unlocked the new skill of walking thunder. As long as she did not end up in a no-fly zone, she could totally walk Wu Yun to death. Therefore this guy still had the leisure to tease Wu Yun in the sky. He said slyly, "Hey little Yun Yun, you did well. Keep up the good work. If you perform well, I will give you a title, vanish into thin air." Wu Yun, fuck, I can't live anymore. Chapter 35:12 Wings vanish into thin air? Isn't this damn brat cursing it to die? Besides, who does she think she is? How could she be qualified to give it a title? The more Wu Yun thought about it, the angrier he got. The lightning struck at Hei Xinjiu even more intensively. Hei Xinjiu summoned the little black bird and the little mushroom at a leisurely pace. Then she said to Wu Yun in the sky, "Dear Xiao Hanio, how come I haven't seen you for a few days and you seem to be useless again? You'd better work harder. Wu Yun was already numb. Fuck, he could say whatever he wanted to say. Anyway, he only had one goal now, and that was to kill that stinky girl. Yes, and that ugly fat bird and that damn Xiao Mogu. After a while, Xiao Hanyo and Xiao Mogu both absorbed the thunder and lightning. He Xingjiu put them back into the spirit beast pouch while saying with a smile, Xiao Yun, don't feel sorry for me. I'm not afraid of being struck. Let the heavenly thunder come even more fiercely. Wu Yun, it felt that it was going crazy. This stupid girl was too good at making clouds angry. Boom, boom, boom. Another hour passed and He Xingjiu released De Hua. 10,000-year-old single pig go. De Hua, who had turned into a black flower, instantly grew bigger and began to devour the heavenly lightning. He Xingjiu narrowed her eyes and said while looking at De Hua, are those wings of yours just for show? If you have the ability to fly into the sky, swallow that Wu Yun for me. Hearing that, De Hua flapped its wings a few times. Unfortunately, its wings were similar to Xiao Hanyo's wings. It could not lift its huge body at all and could only fly a few feet away from the ground. He Xingjiu curled her lips and said, I thought it was a flying pig. It turns out that its wings are just like Xiao Hei's. It was most likely that her words had hit De Hua's sore spot. De Hua grew bigger and crazily swallowed the lightning that struck down one after another. He Xingjiu was stunned. Oh my, so De Hua's degree of darkening was endless? If she was stimulated again, would it bring her any surprises? Therefore, when this fellow had almost finished regulating his breath, he still stimulated De Hua in a different way. De Hua, it's not that I dislike you, master. You said that they were both fierce beasts. At least Qiongqi and Tao Wu had the appearance of fierce beasts. Don't you think that it's a joke that you, a dignified Tao Tai, turned into a pig? De Hua, it's fine that you said you were a pig, but it turns out that purple is pretty good looking too. Why did you have to turn into a black pig? What were you thinking? De Hua, I heard that you used to eat everything. Why are you picky now? No wonder you have turned into a spiritual beast and even lost your body. Unfortunately, no matter how much He Xingjiu said, De Hua did not change again. He Xingjiu could not be bothered to say anything more when she saw this. She sat cross-legged and combed through the thunder spirit energy in her body. As He Xingjiu released the pigs again and again, 10 hours passed. The spirit energy in He Xingjiu's body was not enough to release De Hua again, so she had to start walking the thunder. This fellow was afraid that it would affect the city of the East Phoenix country, so he began to walk in circles. Moreover, his mouth was not idle. Little Yun Yun, do you know what your current behavior is called? This is called the cloud-pulling mill. Ah. Wu Yun was stunned. She had only heard of a donkey-pulling mill, but she had never heard of a cloud-pulling mill? Damn it, she was calling it a donkey in a different way. Wu Yun was so angry that she could not take it anymore. In her exasperation, a piece of cloud split into several pieces and surrounded He Xingjiu's flying spirit tool. The little girl in chapter 3513 was going to be in trouble seeing this. He Xingjiu could only curse in her heart. This damned Wu Yun actually knew the split body technique? Although Wu Yun's strength had decreased after splitting into several pieces, it forced He Xingjiu to stop beating around the bush and could only continue flying forward. This fellow took out a map and scanned it. To the west was a large desert. It shouldn't have any effect, so he went there. Therefore, He Xingjiu flew into the desert with a string of heavenly lightning and a few pieces of Wu Yun. The demonic beasts in the desert were dumbfounded. What the hell was that flying thing in the sky? Why did it attract so many tribulation clouds? After a short while, the demonic beasts saw a little girl jumping down from the flying spiritual device. Oh my, what did this human little girl do to attract so many heavenly lightning? She was probably going to be turned into ashes by the heavenly lightning bolts, but she deserved it. Who asked her to attract the heavenly lightning bolts? She almost scared them to death. The demon beasts were shocked to find that although hundreds of heavenly lightning bolts struck the little girl, she was still alive and kicking. She actually didn't die? However, the little girl soon showed a pained expression. The demon beasts felt that the little girl was probably not able to hold on any longer. Then, they were dumbfounded to see that the little girl summoned a flying spirit tool and then led a string of heavenly lightning to fly away. Oh my, there's such an operation? The demonic beasts stared at the flying spirit tool in the distance with their mouths agape. However, when they saw the flying spirit tool flying in the direction, they all revealed gloating expressions. That little girl was going to be unlucky. He Xingjiu had destroyed several flying spiritual devices, and Wu Yun had finally exhausted the power of lightning in the sky. Wu Yun had no choice but to leave in a huff. A sentence came to his mind. He had been defeated again and again. Seeing that Wu Yun had left, Yun Chujio pouted. She controlled the flying spiritual device and prepared to return to Boulder City. The guy suddenly remembered that the sound transmission talisman seemed to have vibrated before. He took out the sound transmission talisman from his storage ring, and Di Biming's voice came from it. Hei Xinjiu was stunned for a moment, then she pouted and mumbled, "At least that pretty boy has a conscience." Listening to him, it's likely that he will seal the 7 emotions and 6 desires again. Hei Xinjiu wiped her tears with her sleeve and took out the sound transmission talisman, ready to reply to Di Biming. However, she was surprised to find that the sound transmission talisman could not be sent out. The guy was shocked. There was no way to use the talisman here? But fortunately it was not forbidden to fly. She could reply to the pretty boy after she left this area. Hei Xinjiu's thoughts were pretty good, but a full day had passed. She sadly discovered that she seemed to be circling because she had seen the low sea buckthorn grass on the sand dune a few times. Just as this fellow was feeling miserable, she suddenly heard several sharp bird cries. She looked through the porthole and saw countless demonic birds flying over from the distance. Their sharp claws and beaks flickered with cold light under the sunlight. Hei Xinjiu's head was buzzing. Could it be that she had become a snack for these demonic birds instead of being struck to death by lightning? No matter how Hei Xinjiu thought about it, she felt that there was no way to survive. Those demonic birds were huge. With a flap of their wings, her flying spiritual device would fall into the desert. Once she landed on the desert, she would be eaten by these demonic birds immediately. Hei Xinjiu wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Why did she encounter such terrible things every time she walked the thunder? Chapter 35:14 While Hei Xinjiu was spinning around anxiously, the demonic bird at the front had already arrived in front of the flying spirit tool. With a flap of its huge wings, the flying spirit tool was like a small boat in a storm. It fell towards the ground. If it was an ordinary person at this time, they would probably have to wait for death. However, the more dangerous the situation was, the calmer Hei Xinjiu became. She quickly went through all her unreliable trump cards in her mind. The demonic bird in the sky revealed a trace of greed in its eyes. As long as the flying spirit tool landed on the ground, they would have a way to open the flying spirit tool. At that time, the people inside would be their snacks. As expected, the flying spirit tool landed on the ground like a kite with a broken string. Several demon birds swarmed up and began to tear at the flying spirit tool with their sharp claws and beaks. Although the material used for the flying spirit tool was very hard, some parts were still very fragile. In less than 15 minutes, a hole was torn in the flying spirit tool. The demon birds cried out excitedly. It was almost time to eat. The demon birds sped up, but after tearing for a long time, they did not find anyone. Where was the person? The demon birds were dumbfounded. They used their claws and beaks to pull at the flying spirit tool's wreckage, and finally found a big 8 shell. They were sure that someone was hiding inside, so they began to use their claws and beaks to attack the big 8 shell. However, the big 8 shell was unusually hard. No matter how they pecked and tore, they still could not open a crack. The demonic birds could not help but become angry out of humiliation. A few demonic birds worked together to grab the big 8 shell and fly it into the air. Then they fell hard to the ground. They were also dizzy with anger. There was sand below. Not to mention that the big 8 shell was very hard. Even if it was not very hard, it would not be broken. When the demonic birds saw that the big 8 shell was still intact, they were so angry that they screeched. In order to vent their anger, the bastard shell was continuously grabbed and thrown into the air, before it was violently thrown to the ground. Hei Xinjiu, who was inside the bastard shell, was really unlucky. It was as if she was on a roller coaster. She was completely disoriented after being thrown. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Damn it, she just couldn't beat those bastards. Otherwise, she would have plucked all their feathers and roasted them. Seeing that they could not break the shell despite falling so many times, the demon birds could not help but feel a little discouraged. Most of the demon birds flew away in disappointment, but a few still did not give up. They worked together to catch the bastards and flew towards their nest. When they reached the nest, the demon birds threw the bastards to a corner. Their idea was very simple. The people inside would come out sooner or later, and then they could enjoy it to their heart's content. Hei Xinjiu felt that it was no longer bumpy, so she looked out carefully through the crack in the bastard's shell. As this fellow did not dare to make the crack too big, she could only vaguely see a part of the scene. The ground was covered with some dry sea buckthorn grass, and some of the demonic beast's bones and fur. The air was filled with a fishy smell. Shinjo was so disgusted that she almost vomited. Could this be the nest of those demonic birds? They were really unhygienic. Did they capture her and use her as a reserve food? She didn't know if there were any demonic bird eggs in the nest. If there were, they could be used to blackmail those bastards. Although this fellow thought so in his heart, he didn't dare to act rashly. If there were demonic birds guarding by the side, it would be bad. Chapter 35 15-inch You are my bird now. Shinjo sat in the bastard's shell, holding her chin and thinking of a countermeasure. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she smiled sinisterly. These damn bastards dared to capture her, so she would let them taste the sleeping powder immediately. Wisps of smoke spread out from the crack in the bastard's shell. A bird that was responsible for guarding the bastard's shell could not help but feel sleepy. After a while it finally collapsed in the nest. Shinjo listened carefully and saw that there was no movement. Then she slowly poked her head out from the inside of the bastard's shell. When she found that there was still nothing unusual, she crawled out from the inside of the bastard's shell. She immediately found the demonic bird lying on the ground next to her. This guy would not stop until he made a temporary contract with that demonic bird. She had to admit that the bird was bold enough and had enough confidence in her spiritual sense. If the spiritual sense of the demonic beast was strong enough, it could completely devour the person who established the temporary contract. The demonic bird was still asleep. Yunchujo did not wake it up but continued to look around. She was surprised to find that this nest was on a cliff. She carefully approached the edge of the cliff and found that the entire cliff was filled with huge holes. It must be the nests of those demonic birds. Damn it, why were the nests of these demonic birds like beehives? They were all built together. It was too difficult to escape. This fellow suddenly had a thought. Something wasn't right. She had circled this desert many times before and hadn't discovered this cliff. Logically speaking, she wasn't blind to see such a large cliff that reached into the clouds. How could she not have noticed it? Could it be that these cliffs suddenly appeared? Or could it be that she had already left that area? Just as she was puzzled, she heard some movement from the cave nearby. She was so frightened that she hurriedly stuffed an antidote to the sleeping bird and hid inside the big bastard's shell. Almost as soon as Yunchujo hid inside the big bastard's shell, a demon bird flew into the nest. When it saw the sleeping demonic bird, it pecked the bird with its beak in dissatisfaction. The demonic bird woke up from the pain and looked at it with a confused look. Then it lay on the ground again. That was because a clear voice came from its spiritual sense. Big Harry, you are my bird now. Do what I tell you to do. Otherwise, I will hurt your spiritual sense and turn you into a stupid bird. Big Harry, who had just come out of the oven, almost cried out loud. Wasn't it just sleeping in a daze? How did it turn into some bullshit Big Harry? It was contracted by someone just like that? Oh my God. Could it be so cruel? It didn't even know what that damn brat looked like, yet it became her bird? The other demonic bird saw Big Harry's dazed look and cried out in dissatisfaction. What are you standing there for? Is there any movement inside this bastard shell? Big Harry shook his head in a daze and stuttered, No, there's no movement. The other demonic bird looked at him suspiciously and warned, Let me tell you, if you dare to secretly eat it all for yourself, we won't let you off. Big Harry's heart was like a beeping dog. What? Eat it all for yourself. It had already become that smelly girl's bird. It was already good enough that she didn't eat it. Woo-woo, it is simply too unlucky. If I knew this, it should not have volunteered to guard this son of a bitch. Chapter 35:16 The other demonic bird gave Big Hair another warning before flying away. Shinjo saw that the demonic bird had left and then leisurely climbed out of the bastard's shell. Although this bastard's shell could not withstand the heavenly lightning, it would still take a lot of effort for an ordinary demonic beast to break it. However, because this bastard shell was left behind by the little bastard's mother, Shinjo was afraid of accidentally breaking it, so she rarely used it unless it was absolutely necessary. It had to be said that although Shinjo had no moral integrity, she still poured her heart and soul into her own people. Big Harry saw that Shinjo wished he could go up and peck her to death, but now that he had no choice, he could only droop his head and say nothing. Big Harry, when you see your master, shouldn't you have something to say? Shouldn't you at least kneel down and kowtow? Shinjio recalled that she was like a ball being tormented by these demonic birds, and she was instantly infuriated. Big Harry, kowtow? It would be better to let it die. Shinjio was just saying it, and naturally Big Harry would not really kneel down and kowtow. She walked around the nest and did not find any demonic bird eggs. She thought to herself that this was most likely a single bird, so it did not have any eggs. She recalled her previous guess and took out the voice transmission talisman. However, she realized that she still could not use it, so she could only ask Big Harry, "Let me ask you, are we out of the area that trapped me? Does this place lead to Boulder City?" Big Harry reacted for a long time before he understood what Yin Chujio meant. It said with a drooping head, "I don't know where Boulder City is. We can only enter the area that you were trapped in from one place. We only go in to hunt occasionally." Yin Chujio blinked her eyes. She guessed that the place that the silly bird mentioned should be a loophole in the formation or a life gate. No matter what, they had finally left that area and could just go around in another direction. Therefore, she asked, "Let me ask you, if I go in another direction, where does it lead to?" Big Harry looked at Shinjio as if he was looking at an idiot. "This place is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. Other than that area which is land, the other 3 sides are all sea water." Yun Chujio did not pursue Big Harry's contemptuous attitude. Her face was full of shock. As far as she knew, the nearest sea to the East Phoenix country was millions of miles away, or even tens of millions of miles away. How did she manage to run to the beach after walking on thunder? Could it be that Wu Yun was behind this and had gotten her into some teleportation array? Big Harry saw the shocked expression on Yun Chujio's face and his eyes revealed a hint of disdain. One look and he could tell that she was a country bumpkin. She actually didn't know anything. However, when it thought about how it was actually temporarily contracted by this country bumpkin, it immediately felt sorrowful. It wished that it could turn back time. It originally thought that the little girl would be stunned for a period of time, but it didn't expect that the little girl would quickly calm down and ask, "Big Harry, what kind of bird are you exactly? What is your spiritual power level? And what sea is outside?" "The sea outside is the vault of heaven, and we are level 55 shadow-skimming giant-winged birds. We are much higher than your level 8 spiritual illusion," Big Harry said arrogantly. In fact, Yun Chujio had already reached level 1 of the spirit transformation, which was equivalent to the level 53 of a demon beast. However, she hadn't had time to adjust the hidden spirit ring. Hearing Big Harry's words, Yun Chujio adjusted her spiritual power level to level 1 of the spirit transformation. Then she sneered and said, "See? My actual spiritual power is much higher than yours. It's just that I keep a low profile, so I deliberately hide my spiritual power. If I reveal my real spiritual power level, I will scare you to tears." Chapter 35:17, Blue-Tail. Big Harry saw that the light on Yun Chujio's body flashed and instantly increased by 2 levels. He immediately believed her words by 50%. When he thought about how this little girl had easily established a temporary contract with him, it could be seen that her spiritual sense was very powerful. How could her spiritual power only be at the 8th level of the spirit illusion realm? Therefore, Big Harry immediately imagined Shinjio as a formidable character who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. When Big Harry thought of this, his arrogant expression immediately disappeared. He said with some flattery, "Little fairy, since you are so powerful, why didn't you counterattack us before?" Yun Chujio curled her lips. "I just used you to get out of the desert. Otherwise, I would have killed all of you with one finger, you little rookies." Big Harry suddenly understood. So that was how it was. No wonder she did not resist. Just as Big Harry was thinking, he heard the sound of wings flapping outside. Before he could react, he saw a certain Jio who had been bragging, slip into the son of a bitch's shell. She even used her spiritual sense to say, "Don't say the wrong thing. If you let it slip, we will all die." Big Harry, what happened to the unworldly expert? What happened to pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? Damn it, it turned out that he was lying to it. Big Harry felt a deep malice. Not only was he muddled by the temporary contract, but he was also fooled by that smelly girl just now. He almost thought that she was really some powerful almighty. That's right, how powerful could a little girl be? He had really lost his mind. Just as Big Harry was cursing in his heart, the demonic bird flew in again and looked around suspiciously. Then he said, "Why is there a human's aura here? Did you steal the human inside the bastard shell?" Big Harry said unhappily, "Eat what? That bastard shell is incomparably hard, how can I eat it?" Besides, if I eat it, how can my mouth not have blood? When the demonic bird heard that, it felt that it made sense. Then it said, the leader said that we have to give this son of a bitch's shell to our king tomorrow morning. Our king is more powerful than us, so he will definitely be able to break this son of a bitch's shell. Tonight, you have to guard it well and not slack off to sleep. Do you hear me? Big Harry was shocked and quickly said, Blue Tail, is what you said true? That's not good, right? If our king can't break this son of a bitch's shell, won't he blame us? Why would the king blame us? This is our goodwill. The king will definitely have a way to eat the humans inside. Although Big Harry was extremely anxious, he did not dare to say anything more. He was afraid of being suspected by Blue Tail, so he could only say, all right, since that's the case, don't worry. I will definitely guard this bastard shell well. Blue Tail nodded and flew out of the nest. Big Harry walked to the side of the bastard's shell and said anxiously, just now Blue Tail said that the leader wants to offer you to the king. The king is 3 levels higher than us. Maybe he can get you out of there. Think of something quickly. Hei Shinjio almost burst out laughing when she heard the name Blue Tail. She sympathized with that demonic bird called Blue Tail. What kind of sin did it commit in its previous life that it was given the name of an appendix in this life? Big Harry naturally did not know what she was laughing about. He said snappily, you still have the mood to laugh? Hurry up and think of something. Yun Chujio sat inside the bastard's shell and blinked her eyes. Where is your king's nest? Chapter 35:18, 10,000 feet tide. Our king's nest is on the other side of the cliff, occupying half of the cliff. Because in there, besides the king, there are also the king's concubines and children. De Mao's eyes revealed a hint of envy. Yun Chujio rolled her eyes. On the other side of the cliff? Is the other side of the cliff the side facing the sea? Big Harry nodded and said, that's right. It's more convenient to hunt sea beasts and fish in the sea, so the king has arranged the nest on that side. Yun Chujio immediately said with a smile, then it's easy to deal with. Tomorrow when you are transporting the bastard shell, you will deliberately miss and let me fall into the sea. Won't that do? Big Harry thought that it was not impossible. Although it would be scolded a little, it would not do anything to it, so he said, all right, but you have left. What about the temporary contract? Hei Shinjio said with a smile, don't worry. As long as I get my freedom, I will immediately cancel the temporary contract. No matter how bad it is, the temporary contract has a distance limit. If I go far away, the temporary contract will naturally be cancelled. Although Big Harry was still a little hesitant, he could not think of any other way. If he really offered this little girl to the king, this little girl would definitely drag him down with her before she died. So he could only agree. The next morning, Blue Tail and the other 2 demonic birds came over. They and Big Harry worked together to grab the bastard shell and fly out of the nest. They flew to the other side of the cliff. Before they could enter the bird king's nest, Big Harry's claws loosened. The other 3 could not bear the weight of the bastard shell and could only watch as it kept falling. Just as Big Harry was about to heave a sigh of relief, he saw a giant winged bird that was bigger than them grab the bastard shell with its claws and fly into the huge nest. Big Harry's head buzzed. Why did their king suddenly appear? Was over? That little girl had fallen into the hands of the king. She was definitely doomed. Her little life was going to be over. Blue-tailed and the other 3 demonic birds glared at Big Harry and followed him into the nest of the giant winged bird king. Big Harry could only droop his head and follow him into the nest. The nest of the bird king was more than 10 times bigger than Big Harry's nest. At this moment, the bastard shell was placed in the middle of the nest, and the bird king was pecking at it with its sharp beak. Every time the bird king pecked, Hei Shinjio felt the little bastard shiver. She could not help but ask with her spiritual sense, why? Do you think the bastard shell can't hold on any longer? The little bastard pointed at a few places with teary eyes and said, Master, look, there are already cracks here. Yun Chujio looked in the direction where the little bastard's finger was pointing at. As expected, there were already cracks in a few parts of the turtle shell. If this continued, the turtle shell would break sooner or later. Just as Hei Shinjio was frowning, she heard several shrill cries coming from outside. This bastard's heart skipped a beat. What happened? As she expected, the bird king stopped pecking at the king's 8 shells and heard the sound of wings flapping. It seemed that it had left the cave. Soon, Big Harry's panicked voice came from Yun Chujio's spiritual sense. Not good. The once-in-lifetime tide is coming. The sawtooth sea pigs are attacking. I'm afraid that our nest is going to be lost. Yin Chujio was confused. The tide? Sawtooth sea pig? The nest was gone? She couldn't care less. After coming out of the bastard's shell, she found that Big Harry was the only one in the nest. It was looking outside. Chapter 35:19 The opportunity for her to become the king had arrived. Yun Chujio walked to the entrance of the cave and looked outside. She saw huge waves constantly surging towards the cliff. The sea level had risen by several thousand feet, and most of the cliff had been submerged in the sea water. Fortunately, the nest of the Bird King was built at the highest point, so it was not submerged in the sea water. Under the leadership of the Bird King, the giant winged birds continued to fight with the sea beasts in the sea. Yun Chujio almost laughed out loud when she saw the sea beast. The sawtooth sea pig was too ugly. Although it looked like a pig, it was 100 times uglier than a pig. It was covered in wrinkled skin and had a pair of huge fangs. However, although this sawtooth sea pig looked ugly, it looked very ferocious and was not afraid of the giant winged birds. Moreover, there were cracking sounds coming from under the sea. The sawtooth sea pigs were probably gnawing on the cliff. Big Harry said with grief and indignation, "It's over. It's over. Once these sawtooth sea pigs gnaw on the cliff, we won't have a place to settle down in the future. This cliff is the only one within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. There isn't even a small island." Yun Chujio heard Big Harry's words, but she was gloating in her heart. She deserved it. "I told you to eat me, you got your retribution." However, this fellow quickly thought that now was the time for chaos. Why not take the opportunity to escape? Hence, she said to Big Harry, "Big Harry, quickly carry me and we will leave this place." Big Harry looked at the huge waves and heard his companion's sorrowful cry. He said, "I want to protect our nest with my companion. If you want to kill me, then kill me." As Big Harry spoke, he flew out of the nest and pecked at the eye of a sawtooth sea boar. Hei Shinjo did not expect Big Harry to do this. She mumbled, "Io, you have some integrity. Forget it, I'll let you off." Hei Shinjo summoned the chopping board and flew out of the cave. Although a few of the shadow-skimming giant winged birds had found her, they did not have the time to pay attention to her. They all worked together to attack the sawtooth sea boar that was gathering on the surface of the sea. The sawtooth sea pigs were clearly determined to destroy the nest of the skimming giant winged birds. If the skimming giant winged birds did not fight with them for food, their food would be much richer. Therefore, this was a once-in-lifetime opportunity that could not be let go. This cliff was originally made hollow by the skimming giant winged birds when they were building the nest. With the beating of the huge waves and the bite of the sawtooth sea pigs, it was quickly broken into two. Even if the bottom half was not broken, there was no way to build another nest because it was too close to the surface of the sea. Firstly, it would be soaked in the sea water, and secondly, it would be attacked by sea beasts. To make matters worse, in order to save a young bird, the Bird King was dragged into the sea by a few sawtooth sea boars. Soon the sea surface was dyed red. The shadow-skimming giant winged birds had no leader, and it was suddenly chaotic. They could only hover in the air and sing softly. Hei Shinjo looked at the scene in front of her and blinked her eyes. She was naturally not a kind person. But now, these giant winged birds had no Bird King and no place to build a nest. Wouldn't this be a good opportunity for her to become a king? The firmament sea was boundless. It was extremely difficult for her to reach land by herself. If she had a group of birds to protect her, wouldn't she be happy? Moreover, if she could bring these birds into the desert, she might be able to find an exit directly. She wouldn't have to cross the sea in the sky. Chapter 35:20 Taking advantage of a burning house. Yun Chujio thought for a while and said to Big Harry with her spiritual sense, "Come here for a while. I have something important to tell you." Big Harry was circling in the air in grief and indignation. Hearing Yun Chujio's words, he hesitated for a while and flew towards Hei Shinjo. "Big Harry, I don't need to tell you. You know that you are no match for those sawtooth sea pigs. Moreover, your Bird King is dead and your nest has been destroyed. There is no benefit in fighting them head-on. If you want to find a place to rebuild your home, then cooperate with me." Hei Xinjia's crafty look was like a big-tailed wolf that kidnapped a little white rabbit. Big Harry obviously did not believe Yun Chujio's words. How could a weak little girl help them find a place to rebuild their home? "Stop bullshitting. Yun Chujio snorted coldly when she saw the situation. You don't believe me? You also said that there are no islands within 10,000 miles, and there is no place to land halfway. Can you fly that far? But I'm different. I have a boat. If you follow me, I can lead you to find a suitable island or reef. Do you think I'm willing to interfere with your stupid business? It's all because of you. Otherwise I would have left long ago. Hearing Yun Chujio's words, Big Harry was silent for a moment and asked, Are you really so kind? What are your conditions? You guys are in charge of protecting my safety. This is the best of both worlds. Go and ask the other birds now. If they agree, bring me into the desert first. We can discuss it properly. Big Harry looked at his companions who were circling around and wailing. He nodded and flew towards his companions. Big Harry told them everything. Although the other demonic birds were unhappy that Big Harry had hidden the contract, Yun Chujio's suggestion was their life-saving straw. They all agreed without any arguments. The flock of birds immediately flew towards the desert with Hei Xinjiu, but they could not find the entrance. Hei Xinjiu frowned. Could it be that the life gate of the array formation was closed because of the high tide? The flock of birds tried a few more times, but they still could not enter. Therefore they could only agree to Hei Xinjiu's suggestion, because there was no other way out. Hei Xinjiu blinked her eyes. Babies love to take advantage of others. Since we are now in a cooperative relationship, we have to show some sincerity. Come, all the birds come over and establish a temporary contract with me, then we will set off, Hei Xinjiu said with a smile. Those demonic birds stared at each other, establishing a contract with her. What kind of joke was this? If she was up to no good, wouldn't they just be at her mercy? Yun Chujio naturally knew what these demonic birds were thinking. She sneered and said, What? You don't want to agree? You have to be clear that you have something to ask of me. Other than me, do you have any other way to find a new nesting site? Can your cubs follow you in the air for a long time? It's already good enough that I'm willing to help you, but you don't even appreciate my kindness. What a bunch of stupid birds. When Blue-tailed heard Yun Chujio calling them stupid birds, it was so angry that it wanted to slap Hei Xinjiu into the sea. However, when it saw the babies and eggs in the mother bird's mouth, it immediately wilted. It was still alright for them to be adult demonic birds, but these babies and eggs could not travel long distances at all. Moreover, it was unknown what kind of situation they would encounter on the way. The spiritual beast bags of humans were obviously safer. Chapter 35-21. Do you want revenge? Hei Xinjiu did not urge those giant winged birds. Anyway, she was sure that these stupid birds had no way out. Even if the desert gap was still there, the desert climate was not suitable for them. They could not survive in the desert for a long time, so they could only agree to her conditions. Sure enough, those demonic birds discussed for a while and finally agreed to Hei Xinjiu's conditions with their heads drooping. Hei Xinjiu happily collected the large flock of giant winged birds and looked at the sawtooth sea pigs that were still gnawing on the cliff. Blinking his eyes, he asked with a smile, Do you want to take revenge? The giant winged birds naturally wanted to take revenge, but when they saw Hei Xinjiu's thin body and her level 1 spiritual essence, they were immediately discouraged. Blue-tailed bird said disdainfully, We can't do anything to those sawtooth sea pigs. What can you do? Yun Chujio glanced at it and said, No wonder you are called blue-tailed bird. Birds really live up to their names. Blue-tailed bird looked at its blue tail feathers suspiciously. It was called blue-tailed bird because its tail feathers were blue. Wasn't this little girl talking nonsense? Yun Chujio ignored it and summoned Dehua instead. The demonic birds watched as a purple piglet fell toward the surface of the sea. They couldn't help but look at Hei Xinjiu in disdain. Although it was rare for this little girl to be able to use spiritual beasts, how could this thing deal with the sawtooth sea pigs below? Stop joking. It didn't even have the right to stuff its teeth into the sea. At this moment, they heard the little girl shout slyly, 10,000-year-old single pig. Kill these ugly monsters for me. As soon as Yun Chujio finished her words, the demonic birds were stunned to find that the little pig was rapidly growing bigger. Its original purple color had turned black, and a pair of wings had grown on its back. Pigs could grow wings? The jagged sea pigs in the sea were even more dumbfounded. They had already won. Just as they were about to retreat, they saw a huge monster fall from the sky. What the hell was that? However, the sawtooth sea pigs did not take Dehua seriously. Although it looked weird, its master was only at the first level of the spirit transformation realm. How powerful could it be? However, they were soon miserable. After De Hua fell into the sea, it sent one away with its claw and two away with its tail. Even its wings, which it did not normally use, sent two sawtooth sea pigs flying with a casual flap. In an instant, it was as if dumplings were being placed on the surface of the sea. Plop, plop, plop. The sawtooth sea pigs were sent flying one after another. Those giant winged birds were all dumbfounded by what they saw. A few of them were so shocked that they forgot to flap their wings and almost fell into the sea. Wasn't this too unbelievable? This little girl's spiritual power was so weak. Why was her spiritual beast so abnormal? Big Harry suddenly remembered what Yun Chujio had said about concealing her spiritual power. Could it be that this little girl really had hidden her spiritual power, and her spiritual power was actually very, very high? While the birds were stunned, they heard Hei Shinjio say indifferently, "Hand over the baby birds and eggs to me. You guys go and take revenge yourself." The demonic birds immediately swooped down and pecked at the eyes and other weak parts of the sawtooth sea pigs. For a moment, there was a storm of blood on the surface of the sea. Yun Chujio only used De Hua twice and did not attack again. If the demonic birds found out that she could use De Hua countless times, they would definitely blame her for not helping them to protect the cliff earlier. Not only was the human heart complicated, the demonic birds were the same. Chapter 35-22 made me happy. The jagged sea boar saw that the giant winged birds were attacking them like crazy, and they had already achieved their goal, so it was in a stalemate for a while before it escaped into the sea. The giant winged birds finally vented their anger, and their resistance toward Yun Chujio lessened. Yun Chujio was eager to return, so she naturally didn't want to waste any more time, so she said, "Let's go, let's go." Thus, under the protection of the flock of birds, this fellow set off happily. With such a huge flock of demonic birds, naturally no blind demonic birds would dare to come and look for trouble, so the journey was very smooth. Yun Chujio let the demonic birds enter the spirit beast pouch to take turns to rest every now and then. This not only did not affect the journey, but also ensured that the demonic birds had time to rest. At first, this fellow was still sitting on the chopping board. Later, in order to experience the Bird King's scenery, he simply sat on Big Harry's back. It was simply wonderful. Little ones, this king is very annoyed. Change the formation for this king and let this king be happy. Come, one line long snake formation. Another two dragons swimming formation. Those giant winged birds felt as if their hearts were bleeding. They had never done such a shameful thing in their lives, and they even changed their formation? Was it okay for them to go back on their words now? This little girl was simply a pervert. In addition to changing their formation, these demonic birds were also responsible for hunting for this fellow. From time to time, they would go to the sea to hunt sea fish and small sea beasts for Hei Xinjia's tooth sacrifice. Hei Xinjio ate and drank all kinds of food and drinks every day. If she was not worried about Beiming and the East Phoenix country, this fellow felt that it was okay to wander around for a few more days. The speed of the shadow-skimming bird was very fast. In just a few days, it had already flown over 10,000 miles. Hei Xinjio counted with her fingers. According to this speed, even if the vault of heaven sea was very large, they would be able to reach land within half a month. On this day, Hei Xinjio was lying on Big Harry's back and leisurely humming a little tune. Suddenly, Big Harry's body fell rapidly. Hei Xinjio suddenly sat up. The shadow-skimming birds in front of her also fell one after another. Before Hei Xinjio could react, she fell into the sea. The guy stuck his head out of the water and cursed angrily, "Are you still birds? Can't you even fly?" Big Harry said aggrievedly, "Little fairy, it's not our problem. It seems that flying is forbidden here." It was also very aggrieved. Although it was a suborn demonic bird, it was still very scary to fall from the sky, okay? Yun Chujio frowned and tried to summon the chopping board. As expected, it was forbidden to fly. The first thought that came to this fellow's mind was, "Fuck, I've suffered a great loss." Although these giant winged skimmers were suborn demonic birds, their fighting strength in the water was greatly reduced. They relied on the speed of diving down from the sky to attack the sea fish and small sea beasts. Now that they were forbidden to fly, they basically couldn't help her much. She still had to painstakingly help them find a place to build their nest. The more she thought about it, the more she lost money. This fellow secretly cursed his bad luck, but he still summoned a large ship. He only left Big Hair on the deck and kept the rest of the shadow skimming giant winged birds into the spirit beast bag. He Xingjiu frowned. There must be high-level sea beasts here. Although De Hua was still considered powerful, if they encountered high-level sea beasts, it would not be enough. There were cracks on the bastard's shell. He could not use it anymore as he had no other choice. It would be terrible. Chapter 35-23, Eating a crock of meat. Big Harry saw He Xingjia's gloomy face and tried to reduce his presence, afraid that she would vent her anger on him. Unfortunately, he still couldn't avoid it. Big Harry, did you know that this place is forbidden to fly but didn't tell me? You evil heart, you are trying to trick me. He Xingjiu pointed at Long Harry and cursed. Long Harry was almost wronged to death. It said aggrievedly, Little fairy, no, your majesty, we have never flown this far before. How would we know that this place is forbidden to fly? Moreover, if we had been here before, would we still be alive now? We would have been eaten by other sea beasts long ago. At this point, Big Harry looked at He Xingjiu with full of expectation. Your majesty, tell me the truth. What is your spiritual power level exactly? Yun Chujiu glared at it. Didn't you see it? It's only at the first level of the spiritual transformation realm. You unlucky bird, get lost. Big Harry's heart was suddenly covered with a layer of shadow. Was over. He thought that this little girl deliberately hid her strength, but it turned out that she was worse than him. She was dead. If he had known earlier, he would have lived on the ruins of the cliff at least for a few more days. He Xingjiu held her chin in frustration and gritted her teeth. Fuck, there will always be a way. Let's eat some roasted meat first. Long Hair looked at a certain Jiu who was eating her fill and felt that her future was bleak. This little girl had obviously broken all the rules. Was she trying to be a glutton? He Xingjiu ate a few skewers and felt a little better. Looking at Long Hair who was drooping his head, she curled her lips and said, Silly bird, you haven't eaten roasted meat before, right? Come here, this king will reward you with a piece of meat. Long Hair was about to cry. What kind of roasted meat was there to eat at this time? However, he did not dare to disobey. He could only go to Yun Chujiu's side and pick up a piece of roasted meat that Yun Chujiu had given him. After a moment, Long Hair's face was filled with tears. Damn, this roasted meat was really delicious. Even if he were to die now, he would not have lived in vain. Thus, the man and the bird began to eat the roasted meat on the deck. Just as they were enjoying their meal, a huge wave came and the sea water surged onto the deck. The bonfire was instantly extinguished. The man and the bird were instantly enraged. Both of them looked in the direction of the wave. When they saw the huge monster in the distance, they immediately threw their anger to the clouds. Oh my god, they were most likely going to die. Big king, it's a level 61 bloodthirsty swordtail shark. What should we do? Long Hair stammered. He Xingjiu said in a bad mood, what else can we do? Run. He Xingjiu drove the boat at the fastest speed, but it was useless. The bloodthirsty swordtail shark was huge. After rolling in the sea for a few times, He Xingjiu's boat was in danger of capsizing. He Xingjiu had no choice but to release De Hua. De Hua was about the same size as the bloodthirsty swordtail shark. Seeing the two fighting, He Xingjiu quickly ran away. A moment later, De Hua dissipated under the attack of the bloodthirsty swordtail shark, and He Xingjiu had no choice but to release the pigs again. Then, De Hua dissipated again and He Xingjiu continued to release the pigs. The quail on the deck's Long Hair widened his eyes in surprise. So this black-hearted little girl could release so many pigs? Then why did she only release them 3 times before? Was she doing it on purpose? Big Hair did not have any intention of blaming He Xingjiu. Instead, he hoped that He Xingjiu would hide as much of her strength as possible. Otherwise, if she died, they would not be able to live. Chapter 35-24 could be used to refine pills or weapons. Although He Xingjiu relied on De Hua to escape for some distance, the spiritual power in her body was depleting rapidly, and she could no longer enlarge De Hua. At this moment, the bloodthirsty swordtail shark chased after her and opened its bloody mouth to bite the big ship. He Xingjiu quickly put Big Hair into the spirit beast bag, then jumped into the sea and spilled a bucket of black ink. Taking advantage of the cover of the ink, He Xingjiu dived to the bottom of the sea. After calling out little bastard, she hid in the turtle shell, and let little bastard hide the turtle shell in the sand at the bottom of the sea. Hei Shinjio took off the hidden spirit ring and put little bastard into the spirit beast bag. Then she held her breath, hoping that the bloodthirsty swordtail shark had bad eyesight and would not find her. This bastard thought that even if the bloodthirsty swordtail shark found the big bastard's shell, it would not necessarily think that she was hiding inside. It would only think that it was an empty shell. Moreover, she deliberately made the little bastard shrink the shell so that it did not look like the shell of a high-level sea turtle, so it should not attract the attention of the bloodthirsty swordtail shark. Perhaps Hei Xinjia's praying had played a role. This bastard waited for a long time, but there was no unusual movement. He could not help but feel happy. He had finally escaped a disaster. Just as the bastard was feeling happy, he felt the turtle shell begin to shake. Obviously, something was digging out the turtle shell. The bastard's heart sank. It seemed that he still could not escape. The bastard gritted his teeth. If it was really not possible, when the bloodthirsty swordtail shark opened its mouth to bite the turtle shell, she would let the little bastard put the turtle shell into its stomach. HMPH, when that time came, she wouldn't be able to kill it. Thinking of this, Hei Shinjio suddenly felt confident. She let the little bastard out and let it open a tiny crack in the bastard's shell. When Hei Shinjio saw the situation outside, she couldn't help but be stunned. It wasn't the bloodthirsty swordtail shark at all, it was actually two people. People. How could there be people in the depths of the firmament sea? What were they here for? Most importantly, they were obviously going to get rid of her and the big bastard. If they found out that she was hiding in the big bastard's shell, would they kill her and steal the treasure? Hei Xinjia's heart was in a mess. Moreover, she couldn't see through the spiritual power of the two people outside, which meant that their spiritual power was definitely higher than hers. After weighing the pros and cons, she decided to take a look first. No matter what, it would be good if she could take these people's boat back to land. Moreover, these people actually scared the bloodthirsty swordtail shark away. They must be extraordinary. There shouldn't be any danger along the way. They would definitely be able to reach land successfully. Thinking of this, Hei Shinjio had the little bastard close the crack in the turtle shell. Then she crossed her legs and went into the turtle shell, looking like she was in love with anyone. The little bastard stared at Hei Shinjio with his small eyes, thinking that the beautiful owner was really big-hearted. After a while, Yun Chujio felt the bastard's shell shake violently, and she heard the sound of heavy objects colliding. She guessed that it must have been carried to the deck. Someone spoke from outside, "Senior Brother Wang, although we let the bloodthirsty swordtail shark escape, we found this thing at the bottom of the sea. Although it looks like an ordinary shell, after careful inspection, we found that it should be a good thing. It can be used to refine pills or weapons." The little bastard inside the turtle shell was so angry that he rolled his eyes. Damn it, he actually wanted to use his mother's turtle shell to refine pills or weapons. How shameless. Chapter 35-25 actually had the leisure to watch the show. Hei Shinjio was afraid that the little bastard would make a ruckus out of anger, so she quickly put the little bastard into the spirit beast bag and continued listening. Soon, the sound of something tapping on the turtle shell was heard, then a voice said, "I've never seen a sea beast with such a turtle shell before, but it's quite hard. Forget it, it's not bad to bring it back to the sect to exchange for contribution points." Coincidentally, someone shouted that they had found a sea beast, and then came the sound of hurried footsteps. Apparently, those people had gone to see the sea beast, so no one paid attention to the big 8 shell. Hei Shinjio heard the sound of fighting in the distance, so no one paid attention to this place. She secretly opened a crack on the big 8 shell and carefully looked outside. Although her vision was limited, the scene she saw still made Hei Shinjio secretly click her tongue. This ship looked very high class, at least 100 times more advanced than the ship in her storage ring. The person just now had addressed the other person as senior brother. What sect were they from? Could they be from the Lihate Palace? Because other than the Lihate Palace, no other faction would address each other as senior brother. Hei Shinjio pondered for a moment and still felt that it would be better to board this ship. Even if they were really people from the Lihate Palace, she would still be able to find a way to leave before these people entered the Lihate Palace. With this in mind, she had the little bastard turn his turtle shell in a different direction and then watch the show through the cracks. It had to be said that this guy was really bold. At this time he actually had the mood to watch the show. Although she couldn't see it clearly, the dazzling spirit energy attacks from afar were still very eye-catching. The more she looked, the more shocked she was. These people seemed to have even higher spirit energy than the one she had killed, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi. This didn't make sense. She heard that Instructor Lu Jiaoxi was already well known in the Li Hate Palace. These people didn't seem to be very old, so how could they have higher spirit energy than Instructor Lu? Could it be that these people were not from the Li Hate Palace? Just as He Xingjiu was puzzled, someone turned around and looked over. He Xingjiu immediately held her breath. Fortunately, the crack in the turtle's shell was small enough, so she was not afraid of being discovered. That's strange. I seem to have noticed that someone was watching us just now, that person said strangely. Senior Brother Wang, are you kidding? Our people are fighting with those sea beasts in the sea. There are only the two of us on this ship, so how could there be anyone else? Another person said with a smile. The person called Senior Brother Wang shook his head and said with a bitter smile, maybe I'm thinking too much. We've been drifting in the firmament sea for almost 2 months this time. It's inevitable that we're a little spiritless. Another person echoed, yeah, I feel like vomiting when I see the sea. After killing those sea beasts in front of us, our mission is almost complete. We can return to this sect. Just as the two of them were about to continue talking, people came back one after another. It was bustling with laughter. He Xingjiu was afraid that she would be discovered, so she did not dare to look any further. She only listened attentively, but she did not catch any more useful information. Just as the guy was pondering, he heard the person who was talking to Senior Brother Wang say, Senior Brother Wang, this bastard shell takes up a lot of space. Put it into your storage ring. Yun Chujia's head buzzed. There was no way a living thing could be put into the storage ring. It was over. She had been exposed. Sure enough, Senior Brother Wang tried a few times but failed to put the shit shell into the storage ring. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.